I'm Mike Pence. I'm from Indiana, and it's an honor to welcome the largest gathering of conservatives in American history to your nation's capital. We stand together at a historic moment. How we as conservatives respond to these challenges could determine whether America retains her place in the world as a beacon of freedom, or whether we slip into the abyss that has swallowed much of Europe in an avalanche of socialism. While some are prepared to write the obituary on capitalism and the conservative movement, I believe we are on the verge of a great American awakening, and it will begin here and begin now. Let us stand and fight for freedom.
It began as a ripple.
We stand together at a historic moment. How we as conservatives respond to these challenges could determine whether America retains her place in the world as a beacon of freedom, or whether we slip into the abyss that has swallowed much of Europe in an avalanche of socialism. While some are prepared to write the obituary on capitalism and the conservative movement, I believe we are on the verge of a great American awakening, and it will begin here and begin now. Let us stand and fight for freedom.
It began as a ripple, an online whisper, a grassroots awakening to a new threat on freedom.
I've had a yearning inside of me for quite some time. In order to go on living within myself, I had to take an action.
This is not the beginning. It's a continuation.
The president serves us, the Congress, they serve us.
Lady Liberty faces her newest challenge, and across this great nation, a new generation of patriots stands ready for her defense.
When you have government control over everything, you have tyrannic behavior.
We want fiscal responsibility.
We'll give them some stimulus.
Do you think Congress can hear us now?
They were ignored. They were mocked. But in the end, they would not be silenced.
If you don't get involved in the process, your voice is never heard.
A greater cause united them.
I don't care what party you're in.
A greater outcome awaits them.
We're here to be great, not mediocre.
The story of 2009 becomes the living history of the Second American Revolution. Tea Party, the documentary film. Liberty's March as a new generation of patriots.
If we were to allow the free market to take its course now, it would almost certainly lead to disorderly bankruptcy and liquidation for the automakers.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God. Wherever the market is allowed to run rampant through excessive risk-taking, a lack of regulation, or corruption, then all are in danger. We have to act. We have to act now. Because if we don't move swiftly to put this plan in motion, our economic crisis could become a national catastrophe. We risk sinking into another crisis down the road. We've got to get it done this year. The stars are aligned.
And if we don't have it signed into law by then, we will not have a recess.
Starting today, we must pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and begin again the work of remaking America. Remaking America. Remaking America.
Wait a minute now.
I don't know if this country will be the same when my kids grow up.
They're not listening to the people.
Things have gotten to a point where I've got to do something. I've got to do something.
It's time to call for American values, people.
The hard work, folks, starts with us. We have to have the spine.
They're gonna hear us. This is just the start.
I've never seen anything like it. The public is really very, very resistant.
We thought we would have 5 or 6 tea parties. We had 48 that Friday. Less than 8 weeks, we have over 800 tea parties across the country.
This is what we're talking about.
This initiative is funded by the high end. We call it AstroTurf. It's not really a grassroots movement.
They don't like the idea that this is a bottom-up grassroots rebellion against big government.
This plan will require significant resources from the federal government.
The government can't run a free lunch properly.
Tea Party people know more about the bills that are being passed than the Congress people do.
What good is reading the bill if it's 1,000 pages?
They've been trying to pass these bills. They finally got their opportunity.
Our society depends on grassroots involvement to defend liberty.
Let's take more freedom!
We're making a difference.
And I'm going to let them know that I'm angry and I'm going to stand up for my right.
We just have to vote people out.
You have an obligation to speak out.
Take an action now or complain later.
We're going to D.C. to let Congress and the White House know we want fiscal responsibility. We want constitutionally limited government.
Up the revolution!
This is not the beginning. It's a continuation. The March of Washington ends nothing.
Why am I going? Because I have to. It's my job as a patriot.
Anybody on board?
We're bringing doctors from all over the country to go to Washington, tell our elected officials, listen guys, you got it wrong. Government is not the right way to do it.
Why am I going to D.C.? I'm going to get on the bullhorn, I'm going to yell, and I'm going to scream. Before all of our freedom's gone.
People will be coming from all over the country on their own hooks. People who love freedom like to congregate together in support of freedom.
This is a movement of we the people. This is a movement where the silent majority has finally stood up and said, we've had enough.
Tell me what kind of party? A tea party. Tell me what kind of party? A tea party. Tell me what kind of party? A tea party. Tell me what kind of party? A tea party. We're gonna stand and fight before.
Being able to go up to D.C. is definitely a privilege.
This is a new revolution, a peaceful solution to make sure all the leaders start to heed the Constitution. So raise up your voices while you still can and show them that you're proud to be American. And let's go to a party, baby, won't you come along? We're gonna do what's right. Before all of our freedom, stand and fight. Before all of our freedom,
Things are moving.
before all of our freedom's gone.
Good job, Anthony. Good job. Good stop, Christian. Atta boy, good throw. I have more fun than my son, I'm sure. 47-year-old trying to pretend I'm 18 again. I had no idea it would be this fun. Coaching, watching, you know, getting excited. I'm guilty of being an armchair politician. Sitting on the sidelines saying that's wrong, barking and complaining about this, that, and the other thing, and that's all I do. And I've come to realize in the last few years that I'm either part of the problem or part of the solution. Sitting on the couch and complaining and not doing anything is just adding to the problem and not doing anything. I can't live with myself and do that anymore, and that's why I got involved in the Tea Party. Step back, guys. I've always dreamed about going to D.C. I get to exercise my First Amendment rights with a whole bunch of other people who are finally getting off the couch and taking a stand. Whether it's our current president or some of the things that Bush did in his office, I don't care. It's not a partisan thing. It's taking control away from them and putting it in our hands and saying, this is what you do for us.
A large part of our country, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, have thought that we could just let representatives go to Congress and just legislate and serve us. And what we're finding is no matter what side of the aisle you're on in Congress, those people have to be reined in. I grew up in a military family. I was a Vietnam veteran. We were always very patriotic, always very committed to history. And I've been doing reenacting for a long time. My degree is in fine art. I've been a painter, do oil and watercolor paintings, and I do paintings of historical subjects. Each painting takes about a year to do, and the research is 9 months of it usually. I usually have 4 or 5 books per painting. And you can't really paint a historic painting until you know everything. The weather, because if you do assume something, by the time you do it, there's likely, if you paint a cloudy day and it was a clear sky, everyone that knows anything about it is going to tell you. I like to paint things that other people haven't painted. I could probably do another copy of Pickett's Charge, but there are probably 20 versions of that out there now. This one's the Second Seminole Indian War, and there's hardly any artwork about it. Started out with Secret Service up in Washington, D.C. as a graphic designer, and worked for them for 8 years downtown D.C. So I got to see a lot of what goes on in Washington, D.C. with the staffs and with the permanent political class that's there. But of course, being in the government, I couldn't speak out. Those who will not obey the constitutional limits of government have got to go, and their staffs have got to go with them.
Next, Dr. Fred Shessel. Doctor?
Herman, thank you. I want to tell you all how proud I am to be out here among you. I'm a regular practicing doctor, and the reason I'm here is because I see that the government's health care plan is going to rob you of your ability to make your own decisions about your own health care. It makes the entire American public angry. Look around out there. You see, I mean, the town halls will tell you there's a bunch of angry people. And I think we're not only angry, but we're really scared. We're concerned. You know, we're going to end up with something that nobody wants, that the American public does not want. We don't want it. The patients don't want it. Ultimately, the economy's not going to want it. And they're just shoving this down our throat. Doesn't that bother you? With having a kidney stone. So probably what we're going to do with you is send you for some x-rays, but let's take a quick look at you and just see. Hurts a little bit on that side, huh? Yeah, that would kind of go along with kidney stones. I spent, 8 years of postgraduate training, and I spent 29 years of my life being a doctor. And the reason that I do that is so that I can take care of patients. Most doctors that I know do this because we not only wanted to make a living, but we wanted to make a difference. We really wanted to help people and take care of people. And that's been my goal. And now I see a government that's coming in saying, you know, I'm not going to let you do that anymore. I'm not going to let you take care of people the way you think you should. I'm going to set up some panel up here that's going to tell you what you can do and what you can't do. And you can't advocate for your patient anymore. You have to follow these rules, or guess what? You get fined or thrown in jail. So, yeah, that makes me angry.
for Barack Obama, and I don't think that was a really great decision on my behalf. But I wanted change so bad, and I was tired of Bush and the whole Bush politics and his whole administration that I was just ready to move on to something new. Somebody walked up to you and just took the money out your pocket, and you knew that they took the money out your pocket, right? You felt the money come out your pocket, and you look back, you say, this cat just took. Are you going to sit there and let them run away with your money? Or are you going to turn around and you're going to do something about it? You're going to catch them, right? You're going to reach your arm out, you're going to long arm them and say, come on back here, right, with my money, right? Well, that's exactly what's going on. They taking your money right out your pocket. And I'm more in the small, limited government type thing, not the government, take from us, from the working class, and then hand it out to everybody. To actually go up to someone and talk to them about this and they have no idea about it. It is kind of a frightening thing because you never know how a person is going to react. However, I feel like not only is it my patriotic duty, but it's my duty as a fellow human being to tell my fellow man, hey, listen, do you know this is going on? Because at least if they know, they have an option to do something about it. Without knowing, they don't have any options at all. You need to know about that stuff. Whose agenda is this? How does it benefit me and how does it benefit everybody? I mean, don't listen to what they say. Listen to what they sign.
Our Tea Party organizer, Jenny Beth Martin.
We're here to tell Washington, D.C. that we want you to be fiscally responsible with our tax dollars. They're our tax dollars.
I've been involved in the Tea Party movement since the very beginning. Tea Party Patriots formed as the organization to keep the people who are interested in just the Tea Party type issues, which are fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, and free markets. We formed to keep those people engaged.
Did you have a good day at school?
Yeah, here,
You had a hearing and a seeing test. Did you pass those?
Yes.
I want you to be able to hear and see.
Don't you?
Yes.
What about here?
What?
Do you want to be able to hear?
Mommy.
Which yellow? 42?
Yes. 4 bugs.
I used all of my artistic talent in that one plate. I'll never be able to do anything else again. My daughter will make a list, like she'll say, which do you want me to draw? A cat, a rainbow, or a dog? And she'll draw a little picture of each of them. And she'll go around to all of us in the family and say, vote, which one do you want? The cat, the rainbow, or the dog? And so if there are 3 votes for the rainbow, then that's the one that she draws. And so they already understand the importance of elections. I hope that when my children grow up and they look back on this time in their life and in our country's history and the things that I've done, it is my hope that they see that I was working for something that was important for their future and for their generation's future, but that I didn't do it at the expense of ignoring the present and ignoring my time with them.
We are citizens who are active on the internet, whose minds and hearts are fixed on the noble purpose of restoring the limited Republican form of government the founders created in 1789. We're here to tell Congress to repeal the pork-filled stimulus package or expect us to retire you in 2010.
The Tea Party movement was the response to a crescendo of bad things going on at the federal level.
I really believe it began in March of 2008 when Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns came to the fore. And then you move on into the summer of 2008. The banks were beginning to have problems and Washington was saying, oh, don't worry, we'll help you. And the American people said, what do you mean the government's going to help them? Washington is considering a solution that doesn't resemble anything we recognize. And so I was scratching my head. I know American people across this land were scratching their head and saying, what on earth are you doing?
In October 2008, George W. Bush signed into law the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or TARP as it came to be known. It enabled the government to take a place at the table of what were formerly private financial institutions.
What the government needs to do is say hard and fast, you need to run your business the way that you ought to run your business and be responsible.
If, in fact, there were bad actors in the private market, they needed to fail, they needed to be held accountable. Instead, the government stepped in and bailed them out.
When TARP passed, conservatives were just fed up. They were sick of it.
Then came the inauguration, and shortly thereafter, you had the stimulus bill, $787 billion.
The advocates of big government typically use crises, whether it be times of war or particularly times of economic crisis, to use that as a wedge to drive new government programs.
We saw bailing out the housing market and the automotive industry.
We've got a federal government now that is running car companies. Where in the Constitution is that?
When Rick Santelli gave his rant back in February, and he was saying that people needed to be responsible for themselves, so the government and neighbors didn't need to bail people out who couldn't afford their mortgages anymore, it struck a chord with me personally.
You know, the government is promoting bad behavior. This is America. How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage that has an extra bathroom and can't pay their bills? Raise their hand. How about we all... President Obama, are you listening?
How about we all stop paying our mortgage? It's a moral hazard.
We're thinking of having a Chicago Tea Party in July. All you capitalists that want to show up to Lake Michigan, I'm going to start organizing. If you read our founding fathers, people like Benjamin Franklin and Jefferson, what we're doing in this country now is making them roll over in their graves.
I tweeted about it, and on Friday, February 20th, I believe, we had our first nationwide conference call. There were about 22 people on that call, and we decided we wanted to do an event, a tea party.
The Boston Tea Party, here in the British Americas, a group of colonists stood up against a ship loaded down with British tea that had come into port in Boston Harbor. That tea was being taxed heavily against the colonies by the British government. The people in the colonies did not have representatives in Parliament in Britain, and so there was no representation for the taxes that were being levied on them. It was taxation without representation. And so on December 16th, 1773, they stood up against the then Governor Thomas Hutchinson in Boston and dumped the tea into the harbor. Flash forward, and that story, that principle, that spirit of we the people rising up against the tendency of government to encroach upon our lives, we're seeing it again in the 21st century.
Thanks for coming today. Let's dump some tea in the water. Dump the tea. Dump the tea. The power is still in our hands. It's not your money.
Disgust with the stimulus package. Repeal or retire.
We need to speak out. We need to start taking some action.
We want to bail out.
Rod 'em, big boy!
God bless America.
It's the American dream! What you're doing is important. You're exercising your right as an American. Enough is enough!
If you find a socialist, kick him out of office.
As it turned out, we had nearly 50 tea parties. We had over 30,000 people attend. All of this in less than 5 business days.
We're in the right. We won't wreck.
The Tea Party movement, from the word go, was a threat to the Obama administration, to the Democratic Party's attempt to say that the Republican Party is dead, the conservative movement is over, and that this is going to be a permanent majority for liberal Democrats in order to expand the state. The American people stood up. It caught Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, Barack Obama, David Axelrod, Anderson Cooper, Janine Garofalo, and Bill Maher by surprise. And these people started to call these people teabaggers. They tried to call them racist. They threw those out there because what they were trying to do was to tell the American people, the viewing public, you have to accept this. They wanted to tell these people, don't join them in their rebellion against the expansion of government.
USA! USA!
These folks are real. They're afraid for their future. They're angry about the disrespect for themselves in the past and the history and traditions of this great nation.
These were individuals, many of whom who had never even been in a rally before. And they were coming out because they believed in some principles that were being talked about, and they believed they were being ignored.
We immediately started beginning plans for the Tax Day Tea Parties on April 15th. We had a website set up, taxdayteaparty.com, and people registered their events there. There were over 850 events that we had all across the country.
All of a sudden, we've got Americans that say, hey, wait a minute, we are the forgotten man here. We're the people who've been paying the bills. We're the people whose productivity, whose ability to take care of our children, whose ability to be free on our own terms is diminished.
Cap and trade was the next big issue that came up. It passed the House in June, and overnight people were so angry across this country that the cap and trade passed that we planned protests in less than 12 hours across this country and had thousands of people come out and protest the cap and trade.
Healthcare legislation was another thing that was supposed to be passed before the August recess. Where August recess normally comes and goes and you might get 20 or 30 folks there were August recess town hall meetings with congressional representatives where you had thousands of folks coming out.
We have got to go to every town hall meeting. We have got to go to every elected representative and remind them that they're on our dime.
Stop spending our money!
People are arriving 2 hours early just to get in to a town hall meeting. And if they can't get in, they're standing outside.
People standing in line like they were coming to the Friday night football game. And they're coming to a congressional town hall meeting holding copies of a 1,200-page health care bill that they understood better than the congressional representative who was trying to sell them this bill of goods.
Are they going to be willing to be on the same plan they're asking us to be on?
But it'll be a cold way in hell before he socializes my country.
Right now in California, as a small business owner, I could use tort reform. I could use competition. There are 1,300 insurance companies in the United States, and 6 of them, I could only use 6 in California. If you let the free market system work, everybody could have insurance.
Claire McCaskill, I'm not so much looking for an explanation from her as I'm looking for an apology, because this should not even be.
Originally they had us in a room for about 150 people, but there's a little over 1,000 people, so they had to move us downstairs to a large cafeteria. Once we got down there, the staffer opened up the floor for questions. She had a microphone set up. I just happened to, my parents got there before I did. They saved me a seat. I just happened to be 3 feet in front of the microphone.
In order for states to be allowed to protect their sovereignty, we need to send them to Washington, D.C. to be a check on the federal government.
I wasn't always a grassroots activist. I don't even know if that's really the best term for me. It's kind of a new term for me. I'm just an American. And I've been given platforms to talk out about the Constitution because of some things that I said at a town hall meeting. So if I get the opportunity to talk about the Constitution and maybe help rally and recall some people to the Constitution, like Thomas Jefferson said, then yeah, I'll take every opportunity that I get.
Benjamin Franklin was one that said that eternal vigilance is a must for this form of government, this constitutional republic. If you don't have that, you slowly lose your freedoms and liberty.
The men who wrote the Constitution understood that a country built on freedom depended on a set of rules that didn't change. And the rules were all about the rights of the individual and limits on the government.
The man that can govern best is the man that can govern himself. So if we leave it all outside the hands of the federal government, I'm going to have a lot more persuasion at the state and local level than I will at the federal level.
The states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. The 10th Amendment says that the powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states.
But what we see now is a very homogenous nation, a nation that doesn't thrive on that diversity of perspective by the states.
The Constitution was originally 4 pages long. If our founders had wanted a larger government, they would have written a longer Constitution. The model they created was the first Constitution in world history where the first word said that it was going to be completely different. We, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution.
It's a notion and an understanding that the American people are supreme in our system, that we as Americans cede power to the government.
And guess what? If we, the people, do ordain and establish it, it's up to us to keep it.
Once a man was dressed to this point with a waistcoat on, he was now decent. So all of those Errol Flynn movies where they're just fighting in their shirt sleeves was totally unacceptable at that time. You've heard the term big wig. And then, of course, the inevitable canteen in which we keep our water. And we're off to the 1720s. Keys to the horse. This is nothing. Just get it past my canteen and we should be quite ready. Somewhere over there. And that was the... Is that a dog? Sniffing at the back of my head. Here we go. I just love these things. All these rules. Okay. If I can get that in 2 hours later. Here we are. Spinning. Yes, I think we are. I haven't put on any weight, I know that. It's not a carriage, you know. Oh, geez, a carriage. Do I have it? I don't want the police to arrest me. Considered, for want of a nail.
You're in.
I'm in. Off we go. As has been said many times, the government that governs best governs least. So we're best off when government goes home on vacation, because then they cannot play with the American people. So we will be providing an escort for them to Charleston.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I love doing reenacting is because it teaches you what really happened. The role of these places in history are so important, and yet our educational system is ignoring the history of this country. Now we're actually going to fire a volley.
So who gets the bailout money, the English or the Spanish?
We'll give them some stimulus. Fire! To the walls, men! Double quick! Quickly! On the walls! The Spanish, sir. Spanish. Yes. Sir. On either side to behind them. Quickly! Double quick! Behind them. You want to be a proper gentleman.
William's a warm man. He's marvelously talented, very insightful. William's definitely full of the flavor of life.
We'd heard that there were some protesters coming, so then the papers showed up. And I thought, look at that. They won't even come to our rally until they hear that there's a protester. I said, well, Don, you did fine. We need a protester at every rally because that'll bring the press out. So this guy shows up and he comes screaming across the street at us, yelling and all this stuff. And yeah, this guy right here. And he actually got in front of this one older lady and started yelling and screaming at her. And he said, well, I'm a black man, and I've been black all my life. And all I could think was, that is what kind of comment is that? And I said, well, I'm a white guy. And he said, well, I'm a pastor of a church. And I said, well, I'm a white pastor of a black church. And he said, you are? What church do you go to? And so I said, well, I go to Maranatha Church, and if you quit yelling, we'd love to have you come visit with us. And then they snapped this picture, and it says it was both yelling at each other. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! We're into 1 Timothy, and let's turn to the Word of God and settle down around the Lord, and let's just open with some prayer. Lord Jesus, we just thank you. The Bible says that perfect love casts out fear. politics is driven by fear. And that's why you see a lot of very unhappy people involved with politics and power and the thirst for power. But my political beliefs apply only as long as they line up with the teachings of Jesus Christ, who taught that we are to love everyone with a sacrificial love. And if somebody approaches you with love, I know that you have nothing to fear.
Brother Dave does a very good job at bringing the word. He is very thorough, and it's more than just preaching, it's a lot of teaching.
Well, I have lived in communities that were mixed. I've lived in the Northeast and the Midwest, and the community that I lived in had been mixed earlier. I think that the blend works real well. It helps us all to grow, and it really enriches us.
I've been there 20 years, and the folks there just welcome me and been there ever since. I believe that if Christians all over, regardless of denomination, regardless of what their demographic, if they will live according to biblical principles, ultimately they will come together as one people. The Tea Party Patriots are absolutely not racist, or I wouldn't be a part of them. I couldn't associate myself with people who are racist. And as I said before, those who make that charge, that is the ultimate in degradation and shows that they do not really have an argument when they accuse people of racism.
Music is the musical expression of the love that I feel inside myself. It's how I take the way that I feel and turn it into sound. That's what music does for me.
Some things are just timeless. Like music, no matter what happens with time, some things just aren't supposed to change or don't need to change. I think that the best way for us to fix the problem is to go back to our grassroots, to go back to what really made this country great was the U.S. Constitution. That's what made this country great. Anything short of the U.S. Constitution would not work.
Kill corruption in the U.S.
You know, everybody's got their windows down today because it's such a beautiful day.
Yeah, unfortunately, they can hear everything.
The U.S. government borrows more money from the Federal Reserve Bank. They drive us into more and more perpetual debt that we can never pay back.
So really what you're saying is that our government's become a beast.
A beast.
A beast.
A beast. When I voted for Obama, you got to understand how that played with the psyche of a black man or a black woman to actually be able to see, the highest seat that you can have in the world, the president of the United States, the highest level of power, and it's a black man. A lot of black people, they feel like they don't have a real way to make it, so if they can't make it, then they might as well let the government take care of them, or something to that effect, or maybe they feel like with the affirmative action, maybe they feel like their voices aren't going to be heard, so they need a program set in place to kind of give them some type of assurance. What I really want to do is try to educate, especially black people. Black people, we never really had a political voice, regardless to the political people like Jesse Jackson and that they get in the office or whatever, and they voice their political opinion. It really don't capture all of us. What I want to do is educate people. I just want you to know what's going on, so then you can have an option to do something about it or not. Don't you want to know if somebody on Capitol Hill is doing something that may ruin your way of life or jeopardize your way of life? Wouldn't you want to know about that?
Yeah, I definitely would.
Sometimes I want to quit. I was thinking, why am I even doing this? I have no support whatsoever from anybody that I know on my end. Everyone that I know that actually supports me are from the outside in, and I don't really talk to them that much. So I'm like, why am I even involved? Am I involved? And then it's like a lonely battle being the only person, and then I have a strong presence too. So when I'm there, you see me. So if I stand in a crowd of people, of just white people, you're going to see me. You're going to know that it's me, and I feel a little singled out, and that right there is heavy. That's really heavy. I have this voice inside my head, I don't know what it is, that just keeps telling me, right now you're all alone, but you just keep down this path and you're not gonna be alone. I can't not change my views even if I want to. You know, even if I doubt myself, or I just continue forward.
That's kind of cute.
Is that for a girl?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I kind of hope it's a boy, though.
How did you know?
I said I kind of hope.
Oh, you hope. I hope it to be a girl. I want my girl to do lady things, like little girly stuff. Like that. No, not that.
Not wearing out in public.
Yeah. I want to make sure that my child is going to be born into a world to where they can actually have a future, you know, and it can experience life and the American dream, and, you know, not get their little ideals snuffed out by, you know, the big fish.
Yay, our first baby stuff.
I'm glad we was able to buy it together versus your family gonna get a hold of you soon.
Push you? Woo. Well, it's been over 2 years now. Lee had to close his business, and I was pregnant and had a miscarriage, and all of that happened within about a 6-week period. That was by far the lowest moment of our entire marriage. Divorce that was never an option.
Yeah.
We had a few arguments, but we'd been married at that point for so long that, I don't know, we just didn't have a lot. Very good. Good job, yay.
We decided to start a housekeeping business.
Yeah, I sat down and said, what if we just do some flyers and see if we can get a few housekeeping jobs that would at least give us some income. We started doing this in October, and in October that's when the first TARP passed, and all these companies were getting bailouts. And that was really frustrating to us personally. It went against what we believed in politically, what we think is right politically, but also it's even more fundamental than that. The system is set up so that when a company fails, it fails, you file bankruptcy, and you move on. I would say several times, I'd just say, thank goodness we weren't dependent on the government, and I'd rather be sitting here cleaning this bathtub than be dependent on the government that way. And I said that several times as we were going through it. And I felt like at least we could take pride in the work that we were doing, and that we accepted responsibility for the mistakes that happened and the problems that happened in the business, and we moved on from it. We thought we were going to keep the house, and there were some problems with the papers that were filed, and we lost the house.
I had planned to call and have all this stuff donated to charity and have it picked up so the neighbors wouldn't have to deal with having a huge mess out on the front lawn. This is the main road through this neighborhood, which has several thousand homes in it, and there's a lot of traffic that goes right by here every day. So it was a big spectacle with all this stuff out on the lawn, everybody driving by seeing it, our neighbors having to deal with it, and that's what made me feel bad.
I don't want to look at the kitchen. I miss the kitchen a lot.
They've ripped all the carpet off the stairs.
This house is much larger than what we need. We're able to live without it, and it's just a house. It's truly just a house. The home is where the heart is, and it's true. We know what's important. Our family, our friends, our faith, our country, those are the things that are important, and those are the things that cannot be replaced.
I got the Laura.
Oh, like Laura Bush.
Yes, ma'am, Laura Bush. And did you know that the bird is the most popular item on this menu?
Wow. That doesn't surprise me at all.
I continue to say that she is the right person to do this job, because of her skills and her ability to get the job done. And no matter how many people are out there, she feels comfortable in front of the crowds, knowing what is in her heart and knowing that she's doing the right thing that is right and just for the people of this country.
Thank you. How are you?
Well, she's very passionate about what she does, but that passion is not a passion on trying to necessarily achieve anything. It's a passion built on deep-rooted beliefs, and that is what people are yearning for. I mean, we have so many people that lead efforts that at the end of the day, you become somewhat dismayed because you're like, well, they're just doing that because that's their job. Their only desire here is to take those foundational beliefs and make sure that they remain in our country, because they realize that if we are going to leave our nation to our children and grandchildren better than what we found it.
See you later. Have a good afternoon.
First platter on the list of platters is the Rogers, so if you come here, make sure to eat that, and adding the Reagan sauce to it, because that seemed to be a perfect combination.
You can see this white kidney stone here, and this is a follow-up x-ray a couple of weeks later, and the kidney stone is still there. The women that have had kidney stones and babies will tell you the kidney stones are worse. Hey, Jerry.
Hey.
How are you?
How are you? Good.
How you been?
Good. Good.
Things going well?
Yes.
Super. The segment's being misled because they're thinking, oh, I'm going to get all this free health care. That's what they're thinking. There is no free health care, and it's not going to be good, and you're not going to get a whole bunch of it, because once the government gets in charge, it's going to be rationed. I mean, if you go look at single-payer government health care plans around the world, you can see, first of all, routine things. I mean, it takes you 2 years to get a hernia fixed. It takes you 3 or 4 years to get your knee replaced. But on a more immediate basis, you can take a place like England, where women die from breast cancer 4.5 times faster than they do in this country. Why? Because they can't get mammograms as quickly, they can't get biopsies as quickly, they can't get chemotherapy that they get here. So you're going to see not only an inconvenience, but I also think you're going to see people die. Tell me, what do you think about health care reform? What do you think about the government plan?
Well, I didn't understand what the why it was so necessary to have this handled right now, right away. You know, we're in such dire straits. I've never felt so helpless that these people aren't listening. We have such a wonderful healthcare system that it's scary. It's in jeopardy, and I'm glad that you care. I'm very glad that you care.
The best thing I think we can do is be up there and be in their face and tell them what our opinions are, and tell them, you know, we're watching you. We're going to try and not let this happen. Hold them accountable. Okay. Well, you look great. You know, we do it because we have to, because somebody has to, and you can't sit by and let these things happen. Somebody has to step up, you know. If not me, who?
Free people in the next 30 days. That's my pledge and my commitment to you.
Thank you.
Anybody on board? Yeah. Come on.
I made a pledge in front of these people that I'm accountable to today and tomorrow, that I'll recruit 3 people in this movement. And if I have to sacrifice the time with my children, my wife, and my way of living to do that, then that's what I will do. But that is my pledge. And I did that because I should, and to invoke passion and commitment from other people.
Don't forget about the youth. That's right. Tell your kids, your grandkids, because the time to act is now. That's correct. Don't forget. That's right. I have to be out here, as do all of us, you know, because my voice needs to be heard, and I will be heard.
David is one of my recruits, one of the people that I was successful in bringing on board, who's got a lot of passion.
No, I haven't been politically active, and I wouldn't even say about a year ago, because all I did was sit around and complain about what was going on, and I sat in the problem and I didn't work on the solution. The solution is going out to the Tea Parties.
Here you go, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I came from work one day, and we had gotten a letter from our homeowners association saying, you know, your house is faded, you need to paint it. We don't have the money for it. And I walked up, and all the moms were sitting there, and they were just like, we're going to come paint your house. And I was like, what? I was completely blown away. I mean, so I can't tell you it's common. I could just tell you how amazing these people are to me.
I like doing it. It makes me feel good. You do something together and it's fun. It's community spirit, you know?
I guess I happen to be a Democrat, but I don't agree with everything Democrats do. I don't agree with everything Republicans do. I respect his beliefs and his opinions on things, and he feels this is important to him. I think I've heard him say when you believe in something, you know, actions speak for it, and he believes in this strongly, and I respect the fact that he's taken the time out of his life to go up to Washington and do what he's got to do.
That's a log cabin that your Uncle Art built. That's a true log cabin. That's his land, his trees off his land. They cut it and they went up there and they built it.
Who's that dude right there?
That's me. Please get our troops home safe and soon. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so you guys had a good day off school today. Got to do good things.
We play the Bees. I think the second place team.
I thought we already beat them once.
They lost by 2 runs.
You guys are studying Paul Revere, and you're studying the Boston Tea Party, all at this time when your dad is doing what he's doing. I think that's really neat. So do you guys know what Daddy's doing? Mm-mm. What do you?
Neither does Daddy.
What's he's fighting so that when you guys grow up, that this country can be the same, and you can have all the same liberties that Mommy and Daddy had when we were growing up. Yeah, same like today. So that things don't get drastically changed, so that we don't get hugely taxed and the government doesn't take all of our money.
And run everything. Do you remember? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Peyton. In the Boston Tea Party, just like Paul Revere in the Boston Tea Party, and all that stuff that you guys learned in school about why. What did they do?
Dump tea in the Boston Harbor.
Yeah. Why did they dump tea in the Boston Harbor?
Because they had too much taxes on tea.
That's right.
And everything.
Mm-hmm.
Taxation without representation. Peyton, do you remember that we talked about all the wonderful things that we have here in this country? The freedoms that we enjoy? That it's not like that everywhere? Do you remember that conversation? Well, I want it to be that way for you guys. Years to come. I don't want it to be. I want it to be as beautiful and as wonderful today, then, as it is now. So
I know you want to go. I know. We will take you to Washington, D.C. someday so that you can see the Capitol and so that you can see the monuments and the Lincoln Memorial. Jack has a drive. He has a drive. He has sat back and watched the news, been out online, seeing what's going on, and he sat back. And he's gotten angry, and he can't do that anymore.
I'm going to try to get over the Vietnam Memorial. My brother served in 68, 69, and he lost a close friend of his, somebody that I had met over there, and I want to go over there and etch his name on paper. But I just a special place in my heart for veterans, particularly Vietnam vets, because they never got the respect that they deserved and wanted and needed. They never got it.
I think people are coming out of their homes. I hear again and again from people coming on September 12th the story that I've never shown up at a town hall meeting, I've never shown up at a protest, I've never even talked to my congressman, but I have to show up now because things are out of control.
This is Jenny Beth Martin with Tea Party Patriots, and one thing that I can say in response to that I'm hearing from a lot of our people around the country is they want their congressmen and senators to listen to them rather than to be lectured to by the congressmen and senators and the president. They think it's time for their elected officials to pay attention to what they have to say.
Everybody that I talk to are excited. I think this is going to be a huge event. There's no way to know for sure, but I think it's going to be an absolutely big event.
Hi.
Hey, Joy, it's Jack. So we spoke yesterday?
Hey.
How are you? I'm just Ducky. Hey, look, I've got a friend of mine who wants to get on the bus. If you could book him a place, I'd appreciate that.
They're expected to be between 250,000 and 1 million people.
That's great.
And, there's also, as of today, the Tea Party Express started in Sacramento. So that's going to take them 2 weeks to get to D.C. They're going to end up on 912, that whole bus caravan that started in California. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a memorable day.
Sign making stuff. Right. I got an email today with all the list of all the buses that are coming in from around the country, so I can find out when they're arriving We have an army of volunteers. It's just that we're located all over the country, and they'll be doing a lot of this work. It's here, and it seems small because we're volunteers, or most of us are volunteers, and we're from all around the country, and we do this using free utilities on our computers. For instance, this right here is a Google document. I use Gmail. We can chat using GChat, and this is the way that we communicate.
To put in our packets to the people and then highlight the routes, maybe where we're going to be.
Right. Well, Linda is one of my very good friends who I've known for years, and she's helping me out.
Why am I involved? Because I'm a wife, a mother, a teacher, a grandmother who really cares about her country. Just grassroots people. That's all we are grassroots people. I think the silent majority is going to be heard loud and clearly.
Three hours sleep. No big deal.
We're ready to welcome.
Come on, guys. We're ready for you to be in D.C.
We're going to stand there when Obama goes by, and we're going to have our protest signs up.
What we're talking about here on this panel is how to have an effective lobbying meeting with your member of Congress, and hopefully that's something that a lot of you are going to leave here and go do today.
One of the most important things you have to do is have a message. And most of you know what the Tea Party movement message is. It's about fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, and free markets.
This is a republic. It's a representative republic where the voice of the people is important to the process.
That's what's destroying America. And that vote and the stimulus vote are the two things. I've never seen this before. They're incredibly effective. Why? What do you think happened over all these resets? That was the wake-up call for America. You asked the Democrats who had these meetings and are coming back now when they were committed to vote for cap and trade when they only 5 weeks ago, and now they're on the other side of the issue.
We've seen and talked to a lot of different people about this, and what is amazing about it is how afraid people truly are. Enough so that people would donate $500 so that other people could go to Washington, D.C. for them.
Is that right?
We had a charter bus coming in on Saturday. Some of the seats are paid for by donors. Other people are unemployed, and it's the last dollars they got in their checking account, so we have to know.
That is powerful.
It is powerful. They are scared.
As doctors, you know, we took an oath. We took an oath, and that oath said, I'm going to take care of you to the best of my ability. I'm going to do you no harm. I'm going to protect you. I think this is an extension of our oath.
Our Georgia insurance companies would start to offer those plans because
No, I'm impressed. The architecture's great. All the congressmen look spiffy in their suits. It's pretty impressive. People say to me, this is all about money, isn't it? And I say, no, it's not about money. It's about the ability to take care of my patients in the way that needs to be without bureaucrats interfering in it. We have meetings with individual congressmen and senators. We're actually breaking up in teams to go do that and to take our point of view to them individually.
Senator Judson Hills.
Hi.
Chief Stephen, and I'm a property owner in Maine.
Okay. I mean, I can check with the scheduler, but honestly, chances are probably not good.
Oh my gosh. So now you all are part of what organism? Let me see what I can do here.
And they can say, you know what?
If that's seen as a bad option, I want to take them off that table. And let the states then start figuring out at a more local level, actually what is appropriate on it. Why is the government going to do it? Because you send it up to the government, you send it up here, and you've got all these special interest groups that are going to pile onto that plan.
What's driving this discussion beyond politics and ideologies? Because we're in the clinic every day, and our patients don't want this. Nobody. They don't want this. So when you say there's 80% agreement among who? I mean, there's 100% disagreement when you walk outside this building.
And we know that this is the greatest healthcare system in the world. We know that people come from all over the world to get their training here. We know that we give the best possible care to all our patients, and I don't even know what I get paid for any particular procedure.
We would like you to convey to her that we think that a trigger is a bad idea, because it's an inevitable idea of the way they set up the system.
We're asking the senator to not vote in favor of anything that includes a mandate that forces a one-size-fits-all health plan.
Oh boy, look at the doctors coming in. I'm feeling better already.
We stumbled into this hearing, is really what it was, from Congressman Conyers, and it was a health and information hearing, and it was all about single payer. And he had lined up a number of speakers to talk about single payer.
Single payer systems have an enormous capacity to create what I believe to be the magic solution to everybody's dream of providing better health quality and better health care at the level of the population.
If you have something you want to lay on Congressperson, don't hesitate.
We don't feel like we've been involved in the process at all. The people who've been involved in the process supposedly representing us are not people taking care of patients every day, are not seeing what happens on a daily basis, both on the uninsured and the insured. We all take care of uninsured every day, and that's why we went into medicine to take care of patients. We want to still do that. We want to be able to provide the best health care.
And here is an example of how we've taken our time out to come to express to you our concern about a particular thing that we believe could be addressed.
He actually suspended his entire agenda and made it a conversation between us and him and his experts.
What have allowed us physicians to actually take care of more patients, even those that are uninsured, which is what all of us are talking about here, was not Washington, was not anybody, was actually the private sector. And you know what it was? Walmart $4 prescription plan. After Walmart came with that, it went to Target and everybody else. Our point here is that sometimes when we let the private sector compete, immediately the costs come down.
We have the best cancer survival rates in this country than anywhere else. The Canadian system, yes, you have access to the system. Every Canadian citizen has access to the system. However, there's a price to pay. The waits are tremendously long. To see a physician, to see a specialist, to have surgery. They have to go by government-mandated protocols.
You're convincing me that we don't want the Canadian system. The Canadians say they want the system. And I'm telling you that we've got 50 million people that don't have a dime's worth of insurance. They can't get any system. So tell me, what is it that the American people want?
American people, like any human being, of course wants good health care. High quality, fast access, good treatment at a low cost. The number of Americans that are uninsured is debatable.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is.
Well, just tell me what you think it is.
Well, I think the number is probably closer to 15 million. Because if you exclude young people who choose not to have health care, if you exclude illegal immigrants, who we treat now for free anyway, because when they show up to the emergency room, we as physicians are obliged to treat them. The insurance companies don't pay a dime because they're uninsured, yet the hospitals eat up the cost. So, yes, there is a problem. The system needs fixing, but I don't think the system needs a complete overhaul, as some of the members of Congress have suggested.
In the end, we got to come up with something. You say we do need reform,
yes,
but nothing as drastic as a single payer.
Correct.
Okay, well, what do we need? Come on up.
Most of you know me, but my name is Van Kasabian. Originally from Montreal, Canada, where I trained, and then I went to do my fellowship in Houston and was attracted by the American healthcare system. There are good things and bad things on both sides, and that's as honest as I'm going to be. But to drastically overhaul the system is the wrong way. Yes, we do have problems. One of the major problems is the insurance companies. How is it that insurance companies can get together and price fix, and we can't negotiate in the same way? That's not fair. That's not leveling the playing field. If you open up the state borders and let insurance companies accept patients from other states, increase competition, you're going to see costs go down. There is nothing or very little on tort reform. How is that?
Well, I don't know. That's why he said he was going to investigate it and have hearings.
You cannot have meaningful health care reform without tort reform. You can't.
We need courts and judges that understand the nuances of medicine, that can evaluate these cases appropriately, throw out the ones that are frivolous, consider the ones that have merit, and not put these in front of laymen that really don't understand what's going on.
But we don't need anyone to legislate that. We have that relationship with our patients, number one.
He actually suspended the agenda, and we had a debate back and forth, a very respectful, quiet, intellectual, thoughtful conversation back and forth until it got to the part where he pulled the race card.
That's what they said.
Basically what he said was, let me just tell you that the only reason Republicans won't vote for my bill is because they want to embarrass the first African-American president.
We didn't come here to hear that either. We came here to debate health care. That was all we came here
I don't care if the president were white, black, green, yellow, purple. It's a bad bill. A number of people have been out there trying to make it a racial issue, which it's not. It has nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Being a physician is much more than understanding physiology. It requires an understanding of the human condition. Some believe that we are driven by financial considerations. The reality is that these views demonstrate a tremendous lack of understanding of the practice of medicine, and more importantly, a lack of understanding of what it means to be a physician, to be a healer. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I've spent my whole adult life trying to become this. I love what I do, and I just want to protect it. And I want to protect my patients. And what really scares me the most is the idea of having to take my daughters to the doctor in a government-run system. That is not something that appeals to me, and I'm going to do everything in my power to protect them.
We will not rest until we make certain the government-run health care is ended.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? Have you seen how many people are here? I'm just astounded. We probably have several thousand people here. Doctors, they said, from every state in the union, all 50. I think that's marvelous. The decisions are made here. If you don't get involved in the process, your voice is never heard.
Here we are at Freedom Works. There's
Works.
Brendan.
Brendan's
I'm
back
alive.
there.
Hi, Brendan.
And we're just chatting about some of the issues that we still have open for the march on Saturday.
Now we're happy. We've got everything's coming together. We're excited. We're expecting a huge crowd. People are already coming into town, filling up the hotels. We're getting a ton of media, so we can't go wrong.
And so there's an example where everything overlays perfectly.
It was the afternoon, and we were preparing the final details for the March on Washington. We had about 30 volunteers in the office, and they were doing everything from preparing signs and rolling T-shirts to be handed out to getting the final logistics for managing what we knew was going to be a big crowd.
In Texas or
It's in Dallas.
We have an impact on the size of government. We use low-cost, high-impact techniques. We don't waste it on...
There's a bomb threat and we have to leave.
Out the door. We got a nasty call from some anonymous source saying that he had put a bomb in the building, and we're evacuating right now. These guys will go to no end.
So let's move that way. whoever would do this on the 8th anniversary of September 11th is a really sick individual.
Healthcare alone, we're talking about 17% of the economy, and the government wants to control it. And there's a lot of interests here in town that want to control it. We think we're going to stop them, and so they're doing this. To be honest with you, we're more annoyed than scared.
What can they do? Kill me, I guess? I mean, what can they do to us?
All of us could just not show up tomorrow and this thing is still going on. Nothing is stopping this from happening at this point.
And you know what? We're going to show up twice as strong.
That's right.
Yeah. You bet.
It's extremely important that each one of you are here tonight. We're at a crossroad in this country. Is government the solution, or is government not the solution? I'm here to tell you, I believe government is not the solution, never has been, and never will be.
It didn't hit me until 2 days ago. I'm going today. Like, wow, we're going up to D.C. and let the government know what's on my mind. How's it going?
I'm so excited. We're about to pull off now.
The energy's starting to build, and the lion is roared. There's no more sleeping.
Here's hungry travelers. I need to feed the biceps.
Hey, I'm not under the influence of caffeine. I'm under the influence of reality, and it's got me in its grips.
Come on, let's get some energy! Yeah!
I'm angry. I'm angry at myself for sitting on the couch and complaining all these years, not taking action. We should be proud of what we're doing. All right, we're not heroes. We're doing the right thing. Today, I'm a patriot. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't need an award for that. Giving me an award for doing what I'm doing is like giving a cowboy with hemorrhoids a medal for not riding his horse. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's my responsibility. And I'm hoping that what we're doing here might ignite a little passion in other people and do something for people that are not voting.
Thank you, Jack. Where's Nate? Get up here, man. Come on. Here's a man who's got some passion.
This is the first time I actually got to speak in front of some, in front of people. Yeah, it is. It's a much bigger crowd, more ears. And you're looking at me. I'm really happy that Americans are really standing up and starting to voice, to show that they have a voice, and let the government know that we want you out of our lives. Our voices are going to be heard. We do not want to be ignored. We're going to make Barack Obama's ears ring.
March on Washington! It's nice weather for reenacting right at the moment. Down with all kings! Down with all potentates! Down with all czars! Up the revolution! Up the revolution! Down with all kings! Down with the House of Lords in Congress! Bring your brooms, hay on a stick thing, and then we're going to let you sweep the street ahead of everyone, saying, "Clean up Washington!" Oh, nice. I love this place. USA! USA! USA!
We give you like 20 seconds to go across the intersection.
Well, what did you expect in Washington?
Sweep the Congress clean. One more time.
Go, go, go.
There we are. They're all shooting at me. Hadn't hit me one time. We marched down Pennsylvania Avenue to remind them that we are a free people. Give us liberty or give us death.
Of the revolution. Down with all potentates and tyrants. And the best part of the revolution. A warm bed. Bypass the secret knock.
Hello.
Everyone who's physically able to march a mile is going to meet at Freedom Plaza. And they're going to march down Pennsylvania to the west lawn of the Capitol. We don't really know how many people to expect. We know there's over 400 buses that are registered. As of this morning, there were 196 other events around the country, in addition to this one here in D.C.
Man on the Street, Washington, D.C., September 12th, 2009. The Tea Party. Here on the street. Tell me a little bit about what we're going to do.
We're going to march on Capitol Hill.
Did you hear that? He's going to march. He's going to march.
We're going to march hard.
He's going to march hard, with vigor.
I don't hear voices!
I would like to give him a couple of real words and have a real debate about things, causing more taxation, more inflation, or trying to get the government involved in health care. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Obama, he's going to feel it today, especially if he stick around for a little while, because the people are coming. They're marching, and they're angry. I think he's really afraid to face the people. I mean, I'm quite sure that he knows about the march. I mean, he doesn't really want to, he doesn't have any type of concern for that whatsoever. He's got his own agenda that he wants to fulfill, so he's just going to let the people march and march and march and march to their heart's content. But time and time again, history has shown us that liberty and freedom always prevail over tyranny and over big government. And this is just the beginning of a huge revolution that's about to happen in this country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. From you!
So I'm ready to rock.
USA! USA!
There's a million people down there.
Supposed to be the first ones in line. They form up behind this line then.
Sure. Sounds like a plan. Well, I tell you what, then stand right to the right and tell those people to move back. No, I want you to
front of the Wayne militia. Let's go, Holy! Let's go, Holy!
Rise up and be counted. Take your part in the solution. Thinking arm in arm, to arms, lower your guns and raise your voices. Join the peaceful revolution. Shout, I'm mad as hell, and I'll ring the bell. Freedom.
We ask you, dear Father, to make our motives clear and our purpose pure. Keep us in these times of adversity. Strengthen our hands to fight.
We're ready for you to step off, sir.
We're ready. All right, sir. We're going. Hey, yeah! Stand to your rights and files! Make way! Make way!
The sleeping giant has truly awoken.
I almost feel to the point like a soldier going to battle.
Constitution is in there.
I can honestly say I was there fighting all the way, every way I knew how.
It's not too late. Grab your tea and follow me. Rise up, be counted. Take your part in the solution. Thinking arm in arm, to arms, lower your guns and raise your voices. Join the peaceful revolution. How you were near to hear a night and seasons become the spirit of Martin, of Gandhi, of Jesus, holding fast to the words with the power that frees us. Rise up, your voices, choose the peaceful revolution. So much you have to say, so the devil can tell. But let them raise the hell, and we will ring the bell. Our freedom, the bell of freedom, the bell of freedom.
Of the revolution!
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the official start time of the 9/12 March on Washington, D.C. Apparently, we were not loud enough in February. We were not loud enough in April. We were not loud enough in July. We were not loud enough in August. So we're turning up the volume. Congress, Speaker Pelosi, President Obama, can you hear us now? Can you hear us now? Can you hear us now?
how we riot. We riot with peace. We riot with ideas. We riot with faith. We riot with humility. And we will not stop rioting.
We are gathered together because our nation is being tested. Our legislators have failed us. Yes, but we all know that the ultimate responsibility rests with us, the people.
We're not Black America, we're not white America, we're not Hispanic America, we're not Asian America, we're not Native America, we're the United States of America, and united we stand!
The media really, the mainstream media at least, wants to ignore us. With numbers like this, they can only ignore us for so long.
Speaker Pelosi, if you noticed, we replaced the grass on the West Lawn with AstroTurf. This whole movement started with a handful of people who decided to take to the streets. And they said that, well, conservatives don't really protest. That's not really what they do. But something changed. And it began last year when the Republicans were bailing out Wall Street. And it continued when the Democrats were ramming the stimulus down our throats. You push people far enough, you keep pushing, and they're going to push back. And that's what we've done.
This is a day that I've dreamed of for a long time. We stand together today in a critical battle for the heart and soul of America. My friends, I join you today as a fellow freedom-loving American. I'm not here to speak to you, but to stand with you and to join my voice with yours. Too many Americans have fought and died for our freedom. For us to give it away with apathy and silence. The majority of the politicians here in Washington seem to think that Americans are either asleep or stupid. But you proved today that Americans are awake, they're informed, and they're outraged.
Now, if you are excited to be here today and help turn our government around, let me hear an amen. Come on, President Obama's in Minnesota today. Let me hear an amen. Now that sound is proof that hell hath no fury like a taxpayer ignored.
I hope this is a message to the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party. Neither one is innocent of the problems that brought you here.
For us, 9/12, when we worked in the ground pit of 9/11 at Ground Zero, we didn't know what was even going to happen tomorrow. After the sun came up on the morning of September 12th, we had hope that America had survived this incredible attack and that we stand together as a nation, as a people, and as Americans, and no one is going to mess with us.
Now, we're here today to fulfill a commitment. When Benjamin Franklin walked out of that Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a lady on the streets, he said, "Dr. Franklin, what kind of government did you give us?" And he said, "I gave you a republic if you can hold it." And we're here today to hold it.
We've started at 10:30 this morning. People were lining up here at 8 a.m. It's 10 till 2 o'clock. And people are still coming in.
Now, if you turn around and you take a picture of Pennsylvania Avenue, there's no slowing down. It's still coming in. I want to know what the largest gathering for any event here is compared to today. I want to see what the final numbers are. This is history. We're in the middle of history right now. We're making friggin' history, beef.
Are there any Patriots Patriots here? Oh, I don't think the man at 1600 can hear us. Are there any American patriots here?
Freedom is a very fragile thing, and it is never more than one generation away from extinction.
Anyone who has a heart for America can do this, because when you look out and you see this crowd, any nervous jitter drains, because you know that you're fighting for your country, and they are too.
This is the American moment. We are a free republic, and we are going to remain that way forever.
We're not here because we're Republicans or Democrats. It's because we're here for patriotism.
We need to send a message to the media, to the professors, to all the people who are trying to indoctrinate us with lies that Woodstock is over.
Reports are coming in that the highways are closed down and our folks are streaming all the way back to the Washington Monument. Let everybody know that fiscal conservatives are the new center of American politics.
I see this as just the cusp of what's to come. I mean, this is just a glimpse of what people are going to see.
Today, a new generation of patriots has emerged to carry that torch of liberty. Not out of hate, as the media would suggest, but out of love. A love for this country, a love for its principles and its history. You are those patriots.
Guess what? The opposition doesn't know what to do about us. Yeah.
To all 1.5 million of you who have traveled here, congratulations! You have redefined gridlock in Washington, D.C.
If silence is consent, it is now revoked. We the people do not consent to runaway federal spending. We the people do not consent to the notion that we can borrow and spend and bail our way back to a growing America. Let us do as those great Americans we remember in this city have done before. Let us stand and fight for freedom.
It is the moral obligation to keep taxes low. We believe it is a moral obligation to be responsible for our families. We believe it is the moral obligation of this government to get out of the way so that can happen.
Now is the time for all Americans to get your chin out of your chest, square your shoulders, pull your pants up, turn your cap around, and be a man. Let's take this country back.
For me, it was something I've been waiting 59 years to see that many people from every state in the Union. The Park Service said this is the biggest event that DC ever had. This was the nicest bunch of people. Their humor was in their signs. The signs were so creative, and it just said so much about the American people, the way they think. And to be a part of that, and then to be the very first person to get to march down the street, I can't imagine anything I could ever do that would have such an honor attached to it.
Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine in December
that on September 12th, just 9 months later, I would be standing in a crowd that large doing something that makes such a difference in America. And it's humbling for me.
I know it may sound kind of bizarre, but I've been deceived all my life into thinking that I wasn't proud of being American. And I've learned that this country is and always have been the greatest country that's ever been, gives the most freedom, and everyone should be proud. If you're an American citizen, you should be proud to live in this country and to be an American citizen.
I'm not in the military, so I can't give myself completely to my country, but I feel like I did today. By voicing my opinion, by doing what I can to protect the Constitution, I did my part for my country today. They gave us this freedom and this liberty so that we could express our opinions, and I think they would be proud today. Today we had a point of reckoning. People will know now where we stand, and we are no longer the silent majority.
I put it into words. My fellow citizens of the greatest nation in the world stood up after sleeping for a long time and exercised their rights that were protected and treasured and paid for in blood by many people before them, to ensure that they have the same rights that our great-great-grandfathers had, that I had. It's not just about me and my own little world.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Here we are in our nation's capital, in the greatest land on the face of the earth, and we came to bring a message.
We did not elect you to rule over us. Americans will not be ruled over. We lend you our power. We're able to stand here today because of our brave men and women in uniform. So Americans, hold your heads up high, wherever you are. All over this world, Americans have the right to hold their heads up high. If there are any patriots out there, I need you to stand up for America. Need you to stand up for our principles. Stand up for our liberty and our freedom. Patriots, stand up! Stand up! Stand up! Stand up!
Said I'm placing some taxation on your tea. Yeah, but the people didn't buy it. They decided they would fight it and be free. They said this one here's for old King George. As the tea was going overboard, they said
documentary. I loved watching that again and remembering what happened 10 years ago and thinking about the difference that we made in the last decade. And tonight we are joined by some very special people who were in the documentary and who helped make the 9/12 event possible, the 9/12 March on DC possible. And so let me just go ahead and introduce these people to you who we're going to have tonight, and let me have them tell you a little bit about who they are. We're going to first start with Luke Livingston. Now, while you didn't see him in the documentary, he was behind the scenes the entire time. So Luke, why don't you go ahead and quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, I'm Luke Livingston. I'm a producer in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was there. I've got my press pass right here. I have a habit of holding on to all these things every time I go to an event. The great thing about the Tea Party movement was, it started with the April 15th Tax Day Tea Parties. And at the one in Atlanta, people were really fired up. And I thought, wow, if there's a call to the Capitol to a big central event, I bet you that's something that needs to be, a story that needs to be told, because the media was ignoring our event in Georgia. They were ignoring the Tea Party. They were calling them racists or, nut jobs or whatever. So I felt that this is a great human interest story. The story of activists is something I like to tell. We were able to, early on, identify some activists that were moving off the couch, like Jack there, that were determined to go to D.C. So we thought, we're going to tell the story of 5 people who are moved off the couch into activism locally, and then their journey to the 9/12 March on Washington, and tell their, follow them along. So we had all these crews going up to this event. We didn't realize what an advantage that would be to have as many as 5 cameras up there for an event that nobody was really covering. And back then, not everybody had an iPhone. I mean, it was like you had flip phones and stuff. HD video wasn't something everybody had in their hand. It was pretty rare to have that. So it was an exciting time, and our crew loved it, and we worked very hard, and we came up with this video. And the video tells the story of these people, and we just wanted to find out, go beyond the signs, go beyond the sound bites, go past all that, and tell the story, the true story, what really brings people to passionate belief in something and a movement into action. And your story, Jenny Beth, is compelling. I mean, everybody was really interesting in that film. I think the film catches better than anything what happened, and that's why it was chosen for the Library of Congress. When we submitted it for a copyright, the National Archives wrote and said, we'd like to secure this for the Library of Congress. Send us a copy. So there's a copy in the Library of Congress right now. You got to go, they'll pull it out of the, dust it off, take it off the shelf, and bring it up to for viewing. And I think I'm pretty proud of that, mainly that it's selected by the U.S. government to represent something that happened.
It is pretty significant that happened, and I'm so glad you were there to document it. And we're going to go to Jack and CL in just a minute, but before we get to them, I want to introduce Brendan Steinhauser, who was in the film. He wasn't one of the people who was featured, but we wouldn't have even had a 9/12 march if it hadn't been for Brendan. So Brendan, tell a little bit about what you did then and how you were involved in making the 9/12 march happen.
Well, thank you, Jenny Beth, and thank you, Luke, for your reminiscing. You brought back some fun memories there. I was working at Freedom Works. I ended up working there about 8 years, and I was there in 2008 when we had the Wall Street bailout. And people forget that happened under a Republican president and a half Republican Congress, let's say. And so there was really bipartisan opposition to that bailout and outrage. And I saw this happening kind of with phone calls to Capitol Hill. People were calling our office at Freedom Works. It was really quite something. And so we helped to lead that fight against the bailouts from our offices there. And we really saw thousands of people taking action on their own. Fast forward after the election of 2008, and you have the election of Barack Obama. He comes in pushing the stimulus package and $1 trillion more in spending. And from where I sat, I was following what was going on across the country. There was first a small protest in Fort Myers, Florida, led by Mary Rakovich. Then there was a small protest outside of Seattle, led by Kelly Carrender. And I was watching some of this happening just kind of in the news. Actually, Michelle Malkin is the one who covered it on her blog. And I just kind of saw this small movement emerging kind of before my eyes, one after the other. And then, of course, Rick Santelli goes on his famous rant, February 19th, I think, 2009. And it just lit a fire. And people around the country kind of got together on social media. We sort of had this phone call to discuss, well, maybe we should do a tea party. What does that look like? How do we do it? I actually wrote up a little blog post, 10 easy steps on how to throw a tea party in your community, right? Michelle Malkin linked to it. It was able to provide some advice and some help to people who were interested in doing that. But I saw that momentum through the calls, through watching on social media, the first round of protests, February 27th. And then literally just a couple of weeks after that, I started to see other Tea Party protests being organized in March, big numbers in Cincinnati and Orlando, 3,000 and 4,000 people showing up. And believe it or not, in mid-March, I think it was March 13th or 14th, that's when I actually pulled the permit for the September 12th, 2009 taxpayer march on Washington, because I saw the momentum even before tax day right before my eyes. I would sit there and Google search Tea Party and see what would come up. And I would see these little events happening in small towns across the country. And, I started to kind of talk to my colleagues at FreedomWorks and say, hey, there's a real movement afoot. If we can help it, if we can assist, if we can do something to help encourage this organic movement, let's do everything we can. But yeah, we pulled the permit in mid-March, started to organize plans to march down Pennsylvania Avenue all the way to the west lawn of the Capitol. I thought at one point we might have 200,000 or 250,000 people. That was my goal. But I was blown away by the ultimate number that we saw come out that day. And, again, I think we saw this organic movement happening around the country. We supported it. We did everything we could to help local organizers. I actually showed up, and met with Jenny Beth and Debbie and others in Atlanta prior to that event. And that's where we actually, as Luke mentioned, announced we're going to have a September 12th event at the Capitol. Y'all come and bring your friends and family. And we just saw the momentum, on tax day and after tax day pick up beyond that. Talk radio hosts around the country were talking about the rally. Local organizers were getting buses together. We were doing everything we could to prepare the stage and the sound to alert the media. But it really was an organic, beautiful, grassroots-led effort. And we were just so tickled that people were coming. They were the cavalry, right, as Jim DeMint called them. So we did everything we could there in Washington, D.C. to prepare and to welcome people and to make sure that everybody had what they needed to get around the Capitol and make an impact.
Speaker Pelosi, if you noticed, we replaced the grass on the west lawn with AstroTurf. This whole movement started with a handful of people who decided to take to the streets. And they said that, well, conservatives don't really protest. That's not really what they do. But something changed. And it began last year when the Republicans were bailing out Wall Street. And it continued when the Democrats were ramming the stimulus down our throats. You push people far enough, you keep pushing, and they're going to push back. And that's what we've done.
I remember being on the starting point of the march. And I think I was the first one on. There was a guy sleeping in his car with the "Don't Tread on Me" Gadsden flag. He was literally sleeping in his car. And I knocked on the window and I said, "Hey, buddy, it's time to go." It was like 5 a.m. And within hours, there were just thousands and thousands of people coming out of the subways. They were showing up on buses. It was loud. It was chaotic. And it was beautiful. So it's a day I'll never forget. And I think the Tea Party movement really came of age that day, and it became a political force. And to Luke and Jenny Beth's point earlier, they just kept attacking us. And the more they attacked us, the more Americans joined our cause.
That's exactly right. And I'm so thankful that you did the work that you did during that time. I was, in those first few weeks, so busy helping just get the local events going around the country and planning the event in Atlanta. And it was good to have that permit pulled. And I've learned from the work you did how important it is when you think you need something, go get a permit and be ready to go. And sweating out whether you're going to have the money to actually pay for something or not. I learned in March and April of 2009 how difficult it is to plan and to scale an event when you don't even know if you're going to have the funds to be able to accommodate the crowd that you're expecting. It's a real balancing act. Let's go to Jack Pierce, who's really featured in the film and is one of the average Americans who got involved in the Tea Party movement.
Wow. Well, thank you. I appreciate being on this panel, and I appreciate the work you people did. I just showed up. I guess you're asking me to put in a digested version, one of the most important events of my entire life outside of the birth of my children. I'll try to keep it concise. I had spent a lot of time over the previous 3 years being really angry with my government. Disgusted is probably a better word. And I was mentoring a young man at the time, and he said he was going to some protest, and I said, "Why not? I'm angry. Let's go." And I ended up going to a Tea Party rally in Canton, Georgia, and got caught up in it, and there was no turning back after that. I think what stands out to me, there's so many things, but the first things that come to mind are two things, and that would be actually the end of the, not the end of the march, but watching toward the tail end of the march. And I think it was 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I was at the end of Pennsylvania Avenue, and the people were still coming in droves from side to side. The road was still filled, and it still kept coming in and coming in and coming in.
Turn around, you take a picture of Pennsylvania Avenue, there's no slowing down. It's still coming in. I want to know what the largest gathering for any event here is compared to today. I want to see what the final numbers are. This is history. We're in the middle of history right now. We're making friggin' history, beef.
And I was brought to tears. I was very moved to see all the people in my country that cared enough to do what that they had done. Because I don't know about other people, but I sacrificed a lot of time from work, and there's no regrets whatsoever. But I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of people that went to a lot of work and sacrificed a lot to come out there because it was that important to them. And the other thing is, it was because I've been watching the mainstream media for a while, and I shop around my news agencies, and being quite disgusted with that. Also, I wanted to know what the facts were, so I pulled a DC policeman aside. I don't know, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, "Hey, what do you think about all this?" And he said, of course I paraphrased. He said he's never seen anything like this in 20 years. He's never seen this kind of crowd. He said, "I've never seen so many well-behaved and clean people either." I think that speaks volumes about us as a movement, that we are not only astroturf, but we're real, and we're common citizens that care about our community, about our country, and we're respectful. I become quite disturbed to this day when I hear people, and when I'm in crowds and I can't speak up, and they talk about the Tea Party, and they talk about they're all this and they're all that, and it's all contemptuous because they have no hands-on experience. I can tell you, being in the front of that line and talking to dozens of people, that I talked to numerous Democrats and several independents, and there are people from all walks of life and all creeds. And that meant a lot to me because since I got started with the Tea Party, I've been called a racist. I've been called a bigot, just a whole bunch of things that were not factual. And it's just not true. It's just people that care enough to get off the couch and do something like me. As I said in the video, I'm either part of the problem or I'm part of the solution. And for once in my life, I started taking action to be part of the solution, and I wasn't alone. And to be honest with you, I spent most of the afternoon after that in tears of gratitude. Excuse me. Because I have the good fortune to live in the most beautiful, wonderful nation in the world, that affords me the liberty that allows me the privilege to do what we did on that day and actually to make a difference.
Thank you very much for that, Jack. And we'll come back to you in a minute about more of it, but the emotions that you have, I understand that completely. And as I was watching the documentary again, and I've seen it so many times, but as I was watching it again, I also was moved to tears. We remember so much about that day. And as you and Brendan both have said, these are things that we're going to remember the rest of our lives. It was an event in a moment in time that is unlike anything else that we ever have experienced and likely ever will experience. Let's go now to C.L. Bryant, who was there. I met C.L. Bryant through Rob Godet, who was one of the co-founders of Tea Party Patriots, and he's involved now with the Cajun Navy in Louisiana. He told me that we had to have C.L. Bryant speak at this rally. And I trusted Rob, and we did, and it was one of the best decisions that I think we made about the speaker lineup for the rally. So CL, introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about you.
Thank you so much for that, Jenny Beth. Yes, it was Rob Godet who captured a speech that I made on April the 15th in 2009, tax day. Jane and I, my wife, had gone to pay our taxes. And we thought we'd check out this Tea Party rally that was going on there in Bossier City, Louisiana, the sister city of my hometown, Shreveport, Louisiana. And when we got there, I didn't see any black faces there whatsoever. So I thought that this was just something that you white folks were putting on. And I thought I'd just hang around and see what happened. Lo and behold, nobody knew who I was. I was a preacher down in another parish here in Louisiana and was just up paying my taxes. That's all I was doing, was paying my taxes. And I was asked to speak, and I spoke. Rob Godet captured that speech, put it on the web, and it wasn't long before I got a notice that it had gone viral. And then I got a call from a fellow by the name I had never met, Jenny Beth. I had never met you either. His name was Brendan Steinhauser, from an organization that I had never heard of, and it was Freedom Works. And they were inviting me, along with you, inviting me to come to Washington, D.C. for this rally. Now, I'm a preacher. I'm a country preacher, I was, and this was going to be out of my pocket that I went to Washington, D.C. And I want everyone to know this, that 1.8 million folks that came there, we as Americans came there on our own dime. And we came to deliver a message to those people who we had put in office.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is one of those events as a black man in America. And I can say this for the first time, when I joined with those people marching in the streets of Washington, D.C. And Brendan, you are absolutely right. They just kept coming. They just kept coming. I remember meeting you and Jenny Beth on the top of the Freedom Works building at that time. We had a reception for the speakers on the top of the building, and I had never met any of you. And I asked Brendan, I said, well, how many people do you think are going to be here? And he said maybe 50,000, maybe 100,000 people will show up. And to me, that was an incredible amount. But before that day really got started, it was like an army of human ants coming from every direction that you can possibly imagine. Matt Kibia finally notified us all that the freeway system had actually shut down there in Washington, D.C. That's how many people had come. But as for me, a black man in this country, for the first time, I really knew what it was to have an American birthright with every other citizen in this country. And it wasn't so much about a party, it was about being taxed enough already. A lot of times when I had to explain why I was a part of this, as a black American, they saw this thing that had been vilified by the progressive liberal media called Tea Party, but they didn't understand why we were there. And the reason I was there, as I told you from the very beginning, I was paying my taxes. I had written a check on that day to mail to the government. And when I understood what that acronym was all about, taxed enough already, well, I got fired up enough to speak about that at any venue you can possibly name. Later, of course, I lost my church. Brendan, you and Freedom Works were the cause of me losing that church. But I was a much bigger cause. Jenny Beth, we did a little radio together early on. Hot Tea Radio is what we did with Rob Godet. And, it was a great experience. And later I met this fellow by the name of Luke Livingston, and we went on to do our thing as far as that's concerned. And to all of you, all of the Americans who will hear this tonight, I want you to know that on that day, 10 years ago, on that day, we all were Americans, and we were in the spirit of those founders who, in fact, gave us the platform and the foundation for this nation. And I trust that we all will continue to stand up and be counted as Americans, and let us together overcome the pain of the past and let that pain be a bridge to our American future. And thank you all for being a part of my life. Jenny Beth, Brendan, Luke, I will never forget any of you.
Well, thank you so much for that, CL. Debbie Dooley I met Debbie Dooley on that first conference call that organized the Tea Party movement, and I found out that she was in Atlanta with me, and that we shared some common friends and acquaintances, but we'd never actually met until February 27th, 2009. That was the first time we met face to face, and we met on a conference call on February 20th, 2009 for the first time. You were there, you were dancing on the stage in the video, in the documentary, and I just would like you to talk a little bit about what you saw happen on 9/12 and how you came to be involved in the Tea Party movement.
Okay, lifelong Republican. I began to get very disgusted with the direction of the Republican Party, especially after the Wall Street bailout. So I began to get active with Freedom Works because they are the only ones of the national groups that really opposed the Wall Street bailout. And after Obama was elected and I heard Rick Santelli's rant on the Chicago, on the trading floor, I called Brandon, who was with Freedom Works in DC, and I said, I want to hold a Tea Party. And he said, okay, here's the information. You need to be on the conference call tonight to plan the first round of Tea Parties. There were 22 of us. Jenny Beth and I met on that phone call. We're introduced. We did not meet in person until February 27th. We've been working together ever since. We planned the Atlanta Tea Party, Tax Day Tea Party, which was something else to have to go through. And then the work with Brandon, and then we had the 9/12 March on DC. I am 60 years old, and so I've seen and been involved with a lot of events in my lifetime. The 9/12 March on DC was something you will never, ever forget. Besides the birth of your kids and grandkids, that was just an event you will never forget. You will always stand out in your mind.
November 2nd, 2010 will be Judgment Day for socialists in this building. They will go home.
Flying in to the airport, I can just see the picture in my mind now. Getting off the plane, off the gate, seeing streams of people coming by with Tea Party shirts on. I saw one guy come in and he was unfurling his Gaston Tea Party flag. And just streams of people that were very clearly going to the protest. Getting to the protest, I said, oh my goodness, this is going to be incredible. Helping, volunteer and doing a lot of the different things leading up to the protest. Brendan had planned an event that was kind of like a pre-rally to get folks, excited at Freedom Plaza. He said, I'll be there at 8:30. We'll have a few hundred people. And when I literally got to Freedom Plaza, I froze in my tracks. And I said, oh my God, this is going to be bigger than any of us had ever imagined and thought, because we had thousands of people already at Freedom Plaza at 8:30. We got on stage, we had speakers come on stage, and then the Capitol Police, after a few hours, came to Brandon and said, you guys have reached critical mass. There's too many people there at Freedom Plaza. You're going to have to begin the march to the Capitol way early.
We're ready for you to step off, Doug.
We're ready. All right, Sal, we're going.
Hey, now, stand to your rights and file. Make way! Make way!
So that's what we had to do. an incredible experience that I will never, ever forget. And it's all these activists coming together saying enough is enough. We want our government back. We're tired of the out of control spending. We're tired of our politicians not listening to us. And it was an experience being backstage, Dick Armey and Brendan and I think Boyd and Gray, all looking from the backstage, looking at the crowd. And we were just speechless. There's not many times I'm speechless, but just surveying the crowd, I was like, oh my God, this is an event of a lifetime. And when we left the event, we didn't leave garbage. We were polite. We obeyed law enforcement, and we left everything clean. Everybody took their garbage, put it up. We left it in the same condition as when we got there. It was just incredible. I will never, ever forget that.
Thank you for that, Debbie. I remember we talked a little bit, each of us has kind of mentioned something about the crowd size. Is Brendan and I were planning the couple of days beforehand, we're meeting every single day and going through the details and making sure we knew exactly what was going to happen. It was almost like neither one of us actually wanted to say aloud the size crowd we thought we would get, for fear of jinxing the crowd size. And CL mentioned how we said on that rooftop, that Brendan said on that rooftop that we thought there'd be 50,000 people. And what Brendan and I had said is, okay, we know that the West Lawn will hold 50,000 people. Let's just say that's what we're hoping to fill up and leave it at that, and we'll just see what happens. Because we didn't want to have too much of its expectations from the media, and we just really didn't know the full size and what to expect. But the crowd was the most amazing. It really was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I didn't go to Freedom Plaza. I was on the West Lawn the whole day, organizing and doing everything that had to be done for that and emceeing the event. And you might have just watched the documentary and see I look a little bit different now than I did then. My children are older and I'm through with mommy weight. But that crowd, I watched as they were coming down Pennsylvania Avenue, and they were coming down and they were coming down, and it just kept going for hours and hours and hours. It didn't stop. And I think that as I think of the day, that's the thing I won't ever forget, because I knew how far it was from the Capitol to the Bell Tower. The Bell Tower in the old post office, which is now the Trump Hotel. I knew how many blocks away that was. And the street was completely full, and it just kept going, and it was completely full for hours. So I knew I had some sense of the crowd size just from watching that. And that's the thing that I take away from that day, is looking out and just seeing all the people and the fact that they just kept coming all day long. And Brendan talked about not having a lot of funding for this. We didn't have the funding to have audio visual set up throughout the mall so that we could have big jumbotrons and other types of televisions throughout the lawn and further down for people who maybe weren't close to the stage. And we also did not have the speakers. We had microphones and speakers for right near the stage, but we didn't have enough to have that all the way down to cover the whole crowd. So there were people who were standing there watching and were there the whole entire day, but they really couldn't even hear a lot of what was going on the stage. They just were there because they understood that being there together was so important to do. And that's exactly what it was. And it just was quite an amazing day.
Hey, Jenny Beth.
Yeah, Jenny.
Go ahead, Luke and Brendan.
The crowd size really presented some problems to us as filmmakers, because we came up in a minivan with two crews, and then we had a crew on buses coming up, and we had another crew shooting footage. There was a local guy. So when we got there, all of a sudden the crowd just swallowed up all our logistics. We weren't really that well organized anyway, but suddenly you couldn't communicate because the phone system back then was overtaxed, and the phone systems went down. You couldn't communicate with people. And once you got locked into an area, either backstage or out at the reflecting pool or wherever you were, you couldn't move because there were so many people. They were going all the way, they were feeding all the way back, halfway down Pennsylvania Avenue. It was a Constitution or Independence. That was really, really challenging. It's amazing that we were able to come away with some of the footage. We were able to kind of crowdsource some footage from some people that were there that met the standard for the film. But I just want to mention something right here. Okay, so what you got here is a resolution, House Resolution 870, that was presented at the premiere that FreedomWorks sponsored at the Reagan Center. We had AstroTurf carpet, not red carpet, because we wanted to show Nancy Pelosi we were the real deal. And this was presented to me by, I don't know who it was, Brendan, that was there, the Congress people, but there were other, you probably, there you go, you got the crowd size. But this says 1.7 million people, and it's from Congress. The progressives and socialists would like to think that we had like 50 people there, but we had a lot, and the government verified it.
I think it was Congressman Tom Price, who was the chairman of the Republican Study Committee at the time. And Brendan, what were you just showing in your screen there?
Yeah, I wanted to show, Luke had the resolution. This is a photo. The poster that we put out, it's a little hard to see, I know, but I wanted to show that, there were so many people that not only did we fill up the West Lawn, they packed us in like sardines. And then they, the Capitol Police and the National Park Service had different areas that they controlled. So they actually were pushing us only on the areas the National Park Service controlled. So it kind of made the crowd go in different places. It didn't go straight down the mall because they wouldn't let us go all the way straight down the mall. And so actually a lot of the folks are not in that photo because they're around the sides. And Jenny Beth, you were exactly right. We wanted to manage expectations because the media was going to downplay the size of the crowd. So if we told them 50,000 and we had, 49,000, they would say, what a disappointing turnout. The night before the rally, I definitely was thinking 250,000 was probably what we were going to get. I never said it publicly. I just was kind of thinking along the 250,000. But again, if I would have said that, or if you would have said that, and we had whatever number, the media would have said it was disappointing, or they would have said, oh, we did an estimate and it wasn't what it was up to. So no matter what, it was kind of a lose-lose. But, the New York Times, I think, did publish this, or they linked to it. There was that security camera at the top of one of the buildings over Freedom Plaza, and it showed 3.5 hours of human beings walking down Pennsylvania Avenue, 3.5 hours. There was also, as Luke mentioned, some footage that was captured both from the Capitol up at the top and then also from Pennsylvania Avenue as folks walked by. And the Heritage Foundation did some estimating on that as well, and they came up with a number of at least 750,000 conservatively. So no matter what, the numbers are always going to be disputed by those on the left and the media. But the other interesting part of that I now remember is that when I was talking to National Park Service, they were saying, well, how many do you expect? Now, if I would have said 200,000, they probably wouldn't have let us be at the West Front anyway. If I would have said anything bigger, they probably wouldn't have believed us anyway. But we gave them the number that was the maximum there on the lawn, as you mentioned, and they kind of, the press kind of ran with it, but nobody really did much work in trying to figure out, at least in the media, how many people were actually there. But, clearly the main point of all this is that people came from all over the country, from every state. We had this fantastic event. They went back home, they got involved, or they stayed involved, and they made a profound impact in our politics and in our culture, a profound impact, winning a historic election in 2010, launching the careers of our Vice President Mike Pence in a lot of ways, a national career, helping to elect Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Mike Lee, Marco Rubio from Florida, Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, countless congressmen, state legislators. I mean, it was an incredible political movement. And I think we talked about this a little bit offline earlier. I think it's fair to say it also laid the groundwork for the current president and his election. The idea that we needed somebody who was an outsider, we needed somebody who would shake things up. We had a number of those to choose from, who were either Tea Party candidates or who at least came from so far outside of the traditional politician that it offered people a real choice. And so I think that our legacy as a movement is a really strong one. And obviously there's still work to do. We still need to tackle the national debt. That's something that's on all of our minds. but we've achieved a lot in the 10 years since this march.
That's exactly right. Since we're talking about some of the differences that we made in the election, even in 2016, Debbie Dooley, what do you think about the kind of difference that we made? You were a Trump supporter from very early on.
I was. I actually endorsed him. I knew Donald Trump, believe it or not, before he made it official, he was running for president. He saw the value of the Tea Party movement, because I remember him being on one of our conference calls, Tea Party Patriots conference calls. At some point, he spoke at a Tea Party rally. I met him. I was among a group of about 10 people in January 2015 at the South Carolina Tea Party. He met with us and he answered the questions. And then I remember watching him speak with Steve Bannon, and we both looked at each other and we said, oh, wow. And I endorsed him early on. I loved Ted Cruz. I just felt like Donald Trump was the man for the job. We wanted somebody that would shake up Washington, D.C., and he has. And I endorsed him. My endorsement was carried on Breitbart in January 2016. I endorsed him. And I just felt like he was the right person for the job, that we needed a grenade thrower in Washington, D.C., because it was so messed up. And no one, I mean, my friends were saying, what are you endorsing him for? But I had vision to see, what we needed. And no one would have been able to withstand the attacks that Donald Trump has. And part of it is because he's a successful millionaire and he has his own money, so he didn't really need money from anybody else. I think the Tea Party movement paved the way for Donald Trump. We helped the Republicans take back control of the House. Not only that, the Tea Party movement is very active on the local level. Beginning in 2010, we began to get active on the local level. So you have Tea Party activists. I know in Georgia and I know in other states, they've started to address and want to change their local government as well. So the Tea Party has been effective from the bottom up. And I mean, I have people, what really amazed me was after Donald Trump was elected president, you have all these AstroTurf movements come up on the left side. And after trashing us thoroughly when we first started, all of a sudden they were saying, oh, this is, I had media people that I know that actually reached out to me on the national level, and they said, oh, don't you think that this movement that's going on is just like the Tea Party movement? And I said, oh, it absolutely is not. I said, we weren't AstroTurf. We weren't funded. We were begging for money, and we were respectful of law enforcement. We obeyed the law, and we were very respectful. And, but it's amazing. They're trashing us in 2009, 2010, 2011. All of a sudden, in 2017, they're trying to compare these movements that are violent movements and very negative movements with the Tea Party movement.
That is exactly right. And they even still, they're trying to blame a lot of things that are happening in the country on what we did. And it's very frustrating to see that, and to see the liberal attacks and the way that they do everything they can to malign us, and frankly, just to rewrite history. And if they don't like, the New York Times recently wrote essentially a hit piece on the Tea Party movement, and even the hit piece wasn't enough, and people on Twitter were upset that they didn't call us terrible things and say that we were racist or whatever else. And the New York Times went and edited their article. And as that happened, I was thinking they actually need to go back and watch the Tea Party documentary, because the documentary explains what was going on as this movement started. And the New York Times, they didn't pay attention to us then, and now they're trying to understand what we were about and how we were able to make the difference that we made, and to to malign us also because they're trying to rewrite history. I want to go to Ben next. We've got Ben Bergquam with us, who is from California. He was in the documentary. He wasn't one of the featured people, but he was in it, and he's moved through this movement, and he's doing a lot of amazing things today. So Ben, tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Let's start with what you did leading up to the 9/12 march and how you wound up being in the 9/12 march. And then I want to hear what you're doing today as well, please.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't realize it had been 10 years until Luke sent me the invite to join you guys on this. So thanks for having me. Jenny Beth, we were back then. And I was in college at the time. I was finishing my undergrad and then going into grad school. And I was just sick of the direction our country was going. I'm a child of a pastor father and a nurse mother who were both missionaries in Africa for 10 years. And we've lived all over the world. I've seen what desperation is. I've seen what tyranny is, and I've also seen what opportunity is. And there is no question that there's no greater country in the history of the world to provide opportunity to any person, regardless of the color of your skin, than America. And or what's between your legs. You know, the attacks we have going on now, and we've been having going on for decades now, to demonize and to undermine America, the foundations of America. I was young then, and I was actually watching the video.
We're at the beginning of the new revolution, and I'm honored and proud to be a part of it. I mean, this is people from across America, and we're saying this. We're taking this in a new direction. I'm so stoked that I just don't know what to say. I mean, it's amazing to see this. I just pray that this is the beginning and it doesn't fizzle. I see this thing as just the cusp of what's to come. I mean, this is just a glimpse of what people are going to see.
And it's interesting. My core values haven't changed. My ability to communicate my ideas have gotten better, I'd say. But the core values of faith, family, freedom, our nation founded as God is our foundation, and a limited government. Obviously, the Tea Party was fiscal responsibility, limited government, and what's the last one?
Free markets.
Free markets, yeah, which I agree with all those, but there was a foundation that was always pivotal to my involvement which was God. And you can't separate those. You look at our founding documents, and so there's just this idea of separation of church and state and all this other nonsense that came along with it. Really are the core foundations that I was interested in. I live in the Central Valley of California, and I've seen what government overreach has done. I was invited to join the 9/12 event with my involvement with farmers in the Central Valley that have been destroyed, especially on the west side of California, of the Central Valley, by radical environmentalism that chose a 2-inch non-native fish species over feeding the world. And so that was really kind of what got me into it. I was communicating on their behalf, and it was just a true honor to be there. You know, it's not until I look back at it now that I realize just what an honor that was, and what a pivotal moment in my life that time was. I was actually the opening speaker before the cameras even started rolling. I got the invite the night before to speak on behalf of the Central Valley and the plight of the Central Valley farmer. And I still have never actually seen the video of my actual speech, which I'd love to see that. If there were 200,000 people out there, plus I'm sure somebody has a video of it somewhere, so I'd still love to see that. But it was just an honor to be there. And then from that, we went back to the Central Valley, helped elect in my local area a city councilman who was a part of our Tea Party, Steve Brandow, and countless others across the country who rose out of this, the so-called silent majority. I absolutely agree with CL's and some of the others before me that were speaking about the impact of the Tea Party. I came on board. I saw the change that it made. A lot of people, the attacks that it got, all the names that we were called back then, teabaggers and all the other, which we ended up taking on as a kind of like the deplorables, as we everything that they threw at us, we just took it and said, fine, call us whatever you want to call us. We're going to keep moving forward. But there's no question the Tea Party had a significant, positive, profound impact on politics in America. And President Trump is a direct result of that. I absolutely believe that had it not been for the Tea Party movement, or that kind of movement, a populist movement where the people finally said, this is too much. We've had too much. in California in particular. It's even gotten worse since then. So I see a lot of positive changes, but the reason I got back involved was because it's still, we are desperately close to losing this nation. We're desperately close to not being a constitutional republic. We're desperately close to losing the foundations that the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, that our founders fought and many of them lost their lives for. But there is a wave of people, there is a remnant of people that is being called to stand for such a time as this. And I believe I'm part of that, and I'm honored to be a part of that. So now we're at a make or break point. This is in our nation's, had Hillary Clinton won, that's why they're freaking out so bad right now. They thought they had it. They thought socialism was going to be the norm. They thought this radical environmental policy and climate change and all this nonsense was going to be the direction our country headed. The LGBTQXYZ and transgenderism and the undermining of the family. They thought it was over and they had it won. And to see President Trump come in that wave of populism for America, it was I just felt the call to get back into it. And so what I did, I just started going out with my phone. This was when live streaming just started happening. And so I would go out and take my phone and hold it up in the air and go and try and find common ground with folks and have do little interviews on the streets. And in that process, I was in Berkeley at the second Battle of Berkeley. I got attacked and got 13 stitches in my head and my ear for simply having a difference of opinion by the so-called anti-fascists, which are truly just the most fascist people in our country right now. And that grew into what I'm doing now, working Frontline America, started that, and then now working for America's Voice to continue to spread the message. And this is the key to me. My calling is shining light in the darkness, raising up the Christian conservative remnant. But the key is communicating to this generation and impacting our culture. We are in a culture war. We are the counterculture of today. And but if we don't stand, if we don't communicate, if we don't challenge and reject the premise of the enemy, we're going to lose this nation. We are so close to losing this nation. So that's my core focus right now, is communicating in the arena of ideas to win back our culture, which will ultimately then impact the votes of the people. And that's what I'm doing.
That's great. Thank you for that update. And I'm sorry you had the stitches. And you mentioned something about how you were invited right at the night before. We were just scrambling to get as many of the grassroots activists who were in Washington, D.C. to make sure that you were able to speak. And we wound up starting the rally, the way you were describing it, was a pre rally. We started hours before the official start time. So in the documentary, you hear me say, welcome to the official start time of this 9/12 March on DC. But the fact was, we'd already been going for 2.5 or 3 hours before the official start time. The official start time was for C-SPAN and for all of the media, but we wanted to make sure that the people who organized, who paid out of their own pocket, who helped get to DC and to bring other people with them, that it was about every one of you. It was about the normal people, much less than about the politicians. Jack, we've been going almost an hour now, so I know we're going to have to wrap up, but I want to know, Jack, a little bit more about just where you are today and what you're doing, and also how old are your kids, because they were in probably elementary school back then.
Yeah, my kids were 7 and 8 at the time, and I think it's worthy to note, I was a licensed health insurance broker at the time that this came around, and I was a threat to what I perceived to be a threat to my professional life, and it turned out it was. I lost my job, and did thousands of other life and health insurance agents. But my kids at the time were 7 and 8. They're now, as you said, they're grown up now. They're 17 and 18. I have one in military school. I have one who's going to be going back to school here shortly. Immediately following the release of the movie, or actually even before that, I was approached by some people at the local and state level to get involved and run for some offices, and I was quite flattered. honored by that. It was not the right thing for me to do at the time. And I think, oddly enough, one of the reasons was that I was too blunt. I was too Trump-like. I don't think that our state level was ready for Trump at that time. But now I'm very far removed from it, although I'm beginning to become very stirred up after watching the video again today and listening to you folks. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I know that I have more hope for my country today than I did in November of 2016. I actually have hope with Trump in office, and I think it's and I agree with all of you. I think that we set the groundwork for even the remote possibility that somebody that far outside of the norm could become president. I'm just thrilled with the fact that he's filthy rich and that he doesn't need other people's money. I feel much more confident that he's going to act in a way that's consistent with his beliefs and not swayed by another human being. But in short, I'm not involved in the Tea Party at this time. I leave all options open. I love my country as much as life itself, and I still fear, as Ben had mentioned, I fear for the future right now, and I think unless more bold steps are taken very soon, that we're going to see the greatest nation that's ever existed go away.
Thank you for sharing that update, and I can assure you we are doing everything we can to prevent that from happening. In fact, Tea Party Patriots Action is going to be doing a rally next week in Washington, D.C. It's going to be on a Thursday, not on a weekend. The theme of it is Stop Socialism, Choose Freedom. We think it's very important that we're just putting a marker in the ground right now and saying we've got two different paths for America's future. One is a future with freedom and optimism and hope, and the other one is a future with more government control, and it is socialist. And we have people who are outright calling for socialism in this country, and I don't even think that some of those people understand what they're calling for when they do it. They may have very good intentions. They may be well-meaning. I don't think they understand the unintended consequences of what they're calling for right now. And it's up to us to make sure that we educate our fellow Americans to explain those differences and why we have to continue on the path of freedom. And also to remind people that freedom takes eternal vigilance. You have to continue to fight to keep freedom alive. It doesn't just happen by accident. It happens deliberately and on purpose.
Can I jump in on that?
Yes,
Jenny,
please.
This is one of those things that gets me. I'm out there all the time confronting these little snowflake lefties that are out screaming and crying and hitting people over the head with sticks to stop the fascists and all this nonsense. But the reality is that it's the same. It's true today as it was during the Tea Party and before. The reason we're in the situation we're in is not because of the left or because of the enemy. And when we're talking about spiritual terms, it's because of the lack of people standing in the gap, people willing to stand on behalf of righteousness and truth. And the Tea Party started not so much, I would say, against the Democrats. It was against weak Republicans that weren't willing to stand up for decades for the values that we hold as conservatives, and primarily fiscally around the Tea Party. But the same is true now. The reason that democratic socialism has taken a foothold is because conservatism, free market capitalism hasn't been communicated effectively, and in a lot of cases, it's been undermined. The crony capitalism and the big business, the chambers of commerce working to undermine our what capitalism really is in a true free market. And so we're not battling necessarily socialism. We just haven't communicated capitalism effectively. We don't really have a free market anymore. And so that's the big thing. You're right. These people are ignorant. The people that I talk to on the streets that are asking for socialism and communism, they have no clue. They have no clue the millions of deaths that they're asking for with either of those options. But it's because they don't know any better, and because of what they see in our current government and in our current economy, which is not free market, is not capitalism. We have a huge way to go to get there, but that's That's why we're here. And I totally agree with you. That's my concern is AOC can go around and spout all this nonsense because kids nowadays, this next generation, have no clue what the differences are. They've never seen the difference. They've never experienced it or, been educated on it.
That's exactly right. And a different project that we are just beginning with, Luke, is actually we're in the very beginning phases of it, a documentary to document people who have come here to America to escape communism or socialism and what they left and why they think it's so important that America continues on a path of freedom. And we've done one mini documentary with a man from Venezuela, and we told about his story. It's about 9 minutes long. We have, as soon as we emailed that to our list, within less than 48 hours, we had 12 different people reaching out saying either someone in their group or they personally had left a country that was socialist or communist, and they wanted to also tell their story. So we're working to actually make that a reality so that we can have these stories out there so that people understand why we're against this and the real world impact of it, not just because I'm saying it's bad. I've lived here in America my whole life, but because the people who have come here from these other countries have escaped something terrible and they don't want to see America go down that same path. We need to start to wrap up, and what I'd like to do to wrap up is get from everyone just some inspiration for the people who are listening tonight. What would you like people to know, either about why what we did was important and it will make a difference in the future, or what they need to be doing now as we look to the next 10 years? And Ben, why don't we go first with you, and then we'll go to Jack and CL and work our way around backwards.
Thank you. And sorry again for jumping on late. But yeah, so first, my call to everybody is every one of us have a part to play in this, no matter what, if you feel insignificant, you're not. Each one, we're different parts of the body. Some of us are called to speak. Some of us are called to be more behind the scenes. But whatever that is, whatever that inspiration is within you, and this has been my message for the last 10 years, is do that. Whatever that thing is that you're called to do. Don't try to do something that other people are doing. Just get involved in some way to impact the future. And I see what we're doing. I travel the country all the time. I rock the MAGA stuff all the time. And it's not so much even pro-Trump. It's a rejection of the intimidation that the left thinks that they can get away with by trying to silence people that they disagree with. So what I've seen, though, as I continue to travel, is when I first started doing this, there was a lot of fear. People would come up and they'd whisper in my ear, "Hey, I support you. Thank you for doing what you're doing." Now it's open. People are running up in the airports. They're high-fiving. They're shouting. I've got flight attendants and pilots that go out of their way to say it overtly. And so I think America's waking up. You're not seeing it in mainstream media. You're not seeing it in our education system. You're not seeing it in politics necessarily directly yet, but it's happening. And as those lagging indicators start to catch up, as media outlets like ours, America's Voice News, start to catch up, you're going to start to see huge shifts in our culture if we continue in this direction. So I would just encourage people, keep standing up, keep fighting back, keep rejecting the premise of the left and the premise of the enemy, and we're going to win.
Thank you for that, Ben. And one last thing, how can people follow you? Because you've got some great things that you're doing. So if they want more information, where can they go?
You can Google Frontline America, or you can go to America's Voice News, and we've got a new show coming out. We're just announcing it, called Chasing Freedom. Kind of ties right into all of this. It'll be it's combining the social media and conservative activist world with network news from an opinion journalist perspective, not straight line journalist. I come from that opinion. But anyways, Frontline America or America's Voice News, you'll find me.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, Jack, what about you? What would you encourage people to do, especially new people who are getting involved for the first time? Either they work the Trump campaign and maybe haven't been activists since then, or they're just starting out.
I guess the biggest takeaway, or one of the biggest things that propelled me to be involved with the Tea Party, is that the first three words, "we the people." our government. It's our government. And if we don't like what's going on, it's because we're not doing what we need to do on our end. It got out of hand a long time ago, and it's our job to take it back. If I'm not happy with what's going on, I need to take the action. The government is for me. The country is, I'm supposed to be represented, and I haven't been for a long time. So if I'm not happy with what's going on, I need to take an action. And the other thing that comes to mind is a wise man once said that a government big enough to give you everything you want is powerful enough to take away everything you have. I think we all need to remember that.
Thank you very much for that. One thing that you did in the documentary, you talked about how back then, a decade ago, you recruited 3 people to join the movement. And I think that's really powerful because it has a multiplying effect. And as Ben was saying, it's every single one of us working with the talents and the gifts that we have and doing what we can together. That makes a movement, and together it makes a difference.
I agree. You know, we all have a talent. We all have something to offer. You know, and maybe you don't know what that is. Go to a rally, get involved, and find out the contribution that you can make to help to make a difference.
I don't want to jump in too much here. I forgot to say one thing, but it ties right into this. It's influence the people you have influence over. Each one of us have a sphere of influence. And if we were all to just target those things, look at the Black conservative movement, and we talked about Jexodus and all these other areas, Latinos for Trump and all this stuff that's going on now. There are places that I can go that I have influence in that other people can't go, and vice versa. We each have those places to go. Go to those places, influence those people, and convince them to join you to influence others. That's how we win.
That's great advice. Okay, CL, what about you? What do you recommend?
Well, I recommend this. Let us never forget that our nation is a land that is blessed by God from sea to shining sea, and we have an endowment that is given to us by our Creator: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That is what Tea Party has been all about. That's what Freedom Works is all about, of which I am a senior fellow there in Washington, D.C. I encourage all of you to download free the CL Bryant Show app daily. We're on across the nation on Red State Talk Radio. Jenny Beth, I got to get you on the show. Brendan, we must reconnect. And of course, Luke, we have to talk. And so I certainly do appreciate this opportunity and thank all of you for helping us reunite. And remember this, folks, when we think about the American dream, it is the only nation that the word dream is associated with. There is no Russian dream. There is no Chinese dream. There is no English dream or Cuban dream or Nigerian dream. There is the American dream. It doesn't matter where you came from or who your father was or your parents were. Whoever comes to America legally can come here and, of course, pursue their life, liberty, and their happiness. And as I have closed so many speeches since that one that I gave there in Washington, D.C. on 9/12 in 2009, I will forever encourage each and every one of us who have the American DNA to stand up, stand up, stand up. God bless you all, and thank you so much for having me be a part of this today.
Thank you very much, CL. I'm so glad Rob introduced us all those years ago. Okay, Debbie Dooley, what about you? What words of inspiration do you have tonight for everyone?
Well, I helped organize about 4 or 5 CNN fake news protests. We showed up. We were just attacked by a snowflake one time. He was pretty quickly on the ground in a fetal position because most of the people that attend our rallies have concealed carry permits. But one of the things that we found out, walk around holding signs up, engaging with the people in a peaceful, positive manner. We had people thank us. We would show up on street corners with pro-Trump signs. People would say, thank you for being here. You don't have to have a big crowd. You don't have to have a stage. You can make a difference by holding pro-Trump signs or pro-conservative signs and have a walking rally. Get 5 or 10 people together, walk around your city block holding the Trump signs and engaging the people. Go to street corners, hold up pro-Trump signs or pro-Tea Party signs. Just get your friends, 3 friends, go to street corners, hold the signs up, and people will honk your horn. People actually thanked us for that. When we were, the last time we were in downtown Atlanta at CNN, we had a lot of African Americans coming up to us saying, we're with you. They were all together, you know, they were individuals, and they said, we like what you're doing and thank you for being here, because people want to see people that are proud to support the president, that we're out there talking to the people. So you don't have to have a big crowd. Just get a few of your friends together. Start waving signs, going out the heartland, going to Main Street America, and let people see we're proud that we're Tea Party activists, and we're proud of our president, and we're proud of our conservative values, and we are going to win and kick butt in 2020.
Thank you very much for that, Debbie. And let's go to Luke, and then we'll go to Brendan. So, Luke, what about you?
Well, over the last 10 years, documenting the conservative movement, you know, what really comes to mind is the old couple standing at the rope line in Atlanta. They must have been in their 70s or 80s, and they stood there all day at the railing of the, you know, watching the speakers. I thought, and I was new to this, is why are they standing there? You know, what, they're so passionate about this. There's something humbling about that to me. And so I've set out to document people rising from the couch into activism. And someone like Marianne Mendoza, you know her, Jenny Beth. We interviewed her back after her son Brandon was killed by an illegal alien. And she was just a house mom in a townhouse sharing a letter of frustration with the newspaper to Obama that he never responded to. And then she takes the reins and she says, I'm going to move into activism, just like you have, Jenny Beth, and everyone here. And next thing I know, she's at this event and that event, and then she's in the Oval Office driving, you know, new legislation and executive orders, you know, nationally. So what I do is I encourage anybody here, baby boomers that have been reunited with our founding principles through the last 10 years of Tea Party training and things like that, you know, use all that education. You know, we were all brought back to our founding principles during the Tea Party movement. And we need to take that training and what we learned and push it forward. At least the baby boomers do. Don't give up. There's a lot of us out there with time on our hands now, and we can do a lot of heavy lifting for the Tea Party movement. We can show up at the rally next week, you know, in Washington, D.C. I think it's Thursday, you know, the Stop Socialism rally. We know a lot more about our founding principles than a lot of kids, and they need to be taught. So I would encourage baby boomers to get back involved, all right? Young guys like Ben, you know, Candace, all them, they've got new movements they're sparking, like CL talked about. But, you know, we were there too, and we can share that information and get people inspired, people like Marianne Mendoza, people like you, Jenny Beth. I think, you know, it's just incumbent on us, and Debbie, you too, to take that information we learned the last 10 years and push on.
Thank you very much for that, Luke. And now, Brendan, what about you? What words can you give to everyone?
Well, I think summing a lot of this up, you know, the Tea Party movement started out as a local, organic, grassroots movement to fight for conservative values. That's where we began. We became a national movement with great leadership at the local level, the state level, the national level. We just worked well together to build a national movement. We came to Washington 10 years ago today to say that our voices would be heard. And I remember thinking this then, and I think I even mentioned it to the crowd, you know, now go back home, go back to where you came from and keep the fire of revolution lit. Go and focus on your local community. And I think that's what I would leave with people is if you want to have an impact in the national level, at the presidential level, the most good you can do is in your community. So go do all the things everybody here is talking about tonight. Do it in your city, your town, your county, from there, the state house or state senate level, and then on up. But focus on your neighborhood, your neck of the woods. And if you're a leader in that neighborhood or in that community, you will have a major impact. And I think that's what we can all do. And if we all kind of hold ourselves and each other accountable to know that we're going to continue that work, then we can rest assured that the Tea Party movement 10 years later will not only live on, but it'll thrive into the future.
That is great. Thank you very much for that, Brendan. As we close out, before I give my words of inspiration, I want to say something to you, Brendan, and something that people may not realize. You personally and FreedomWorks, broadly speaking, you set an example for me as I work to build Tea Party Patriots for how to be a coalition partner, what to expect from coalition partners, and how to share in events and not try to hog all of the fame to myself, but to make sure that everyone who is making an event possible is able to be there and be part of it, and that they also get the credit. You did that with me, and you did that, and FreedomWorks did that with Tea Party Patriots. I was a national co-coordinator for that 9/12 march on DC. At the time, Tea Party Patriots we weren't even raising money. We barely had money to buy t-shirts that we were able to have available for donations that week. But we didn't have any money. What we were able to offer was our time and our organizational skills. And you guys took that and said, if you will organize it, you can be a co-coordinator with us, and you let me MC it. And it set the stage for how we operate at Tea Party Patriots. And I don't know that I've ever thanked you personally for that. And I feel like I should do that right now publicly. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you, and I believed in you then, and I believe in you now, and I believe in the movement and the cause. And it was always about all of the folks who did the work at the local community level, and we were just so tickled to play a role in this movement and to work with all of you. It was important to us that that credit wasn't an issue, that we all shared in that. There was enough to go around, enough work to go around, clearly, and you guys worked and are still working. And so I just want to let you know that I appreciate you and everybody at Tea Party Patriots.
Well, thank you very much. And at Tea Party Patriots Action, we have a weekly action item for people to take. This week and next week, it is loaded every single day. It's not normally like that, but with Congress coming back from being on recess or summer vacation for all of August, there's a lot to do right now. But you can go and find that action item every single week by going to teapartypatriots.org/this week. teapartypatriots.org/this week. Sometimes it's big things to do, like planning an event or organizing an event locally. Other times it's picking up the phone and making a phone call or sharing something on social media. We try to make it possible, so if you've got time for 5 minutes or 5 hours a week, we've got something for you to do. So be sure to check that out. There are ways to contact us and get involved. And we are here to support you. So if you want to do something locally and you need help, please see what we are offering in terms of weekly calls to action. And then if you need anything from us, you can always reach out to me personally. I give my email address out. It goes to me and a couple other people on my team so that we're able to help. So it's jenny.beth at teapartypatriots.org. And the weekly call to action is teapartypatriots.org/this week. And finally, I hope everyone who's watching can make their way to DC next week for the Stop Socialism, Choose Freedom rally.
Starting today, we must begin again the work of remaking America.
The first thing we're going to do is make sure the tax system makes the wealthy pay their fair share.
If the taxes are so high that if you become successful, all your money gets taken away from you, nobody wants to live in that society.
If you like your doctor or healthcare plan, you can keep it.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
We need to make public colleges and universities tuition free.
The way that socialism is implemented, nothing is free in reality.
Climate change, one of the biggest existential threats.
They're asked how they're going to pay for it, and they just can't come up with an answer.
Socialism hasn't worked, and it's led to the demise of one of the most prosperous in Latin America and Venezuela.
A government that's big enough to give you everything you want is a government that's big enough to take away everything you have.
America will never be a socialist country.
We're thinking of having a Chicago Tea Party in July. All you capitalists that want to show up to Lake Michigan, I'm going to start organizing.
You find a socialist, kick him out of office.
Get out of our doctor's offices, get out of our businesses.
We want smaller government. Let's tax for freedom!
It's next Thursday, September the 19th. We're beginning at 11 o'clock in the morning. We'll be through around 1, maybe 1:30 in the afternoon. And then we want people to be able to go speak to their congressmen and both of their senators to make sure that your members of Congress understand that you stand for freedom, you want them to stand for freedom, and you want them to support our efforts for freedom, which includes supporting President Trump and his agenda and supporting the Constitution and not taking actions that will infringe on our constitutional rights. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for being on this panel, to all the panelists. Thanks to everyone who watched the Tea Party documentary again tonight on the online premiere. And thank you for everything that you do to make this Tea Party movement possible. We didn't start the Tea Party movement. None of us even here on this panel did. It was started by Sam Adams in Boston. We are just heirs to it, and we're holding the torch of freedom and liberty right now. It's up to us to make sure that we're able to pass that on to our children and our grandchildren so they can pass it on. So join us and do that, and we will continue to make a difference. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you.